Good morning, everyone. It's a little bit after 10 here, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Steve Shirley. I have the privilege of serving as president here at Minot State University, and just want to offer a warm word of welcome to all of you. Thanks for being here. I want to, in particular, welcome our guests. We have a number of guests and visitors and folks from out of town. Welcome. If this is your first time to the campus of Minot State University, or your first visit to Minot, North Dakota, or whatever the case may be, we're certainly pleased to have you join us today, and to our guests and friends from the region who have maybe been on campus a few times, but maybe it's been a little while, or our alumni who are in the room. Welcome home, welcome back. We're glad to have you on campus today, and thank you to our students. We're going to have throughout the day, we'll have students populating and coming in and out throughout the day and throughout the session as classes kind of ebb and flow. It's a regular academic day here at MSU, so we'll have students in and out throughout the day, but certainly always glad to have a good number of students join as well. So thank you to our students. This event today focused on AI and cyber and digitization and technology and changing emerging technologies and all of these sorts of things is all kind of focused under the idea of the entrepreneurial perspective. And so with that, this is being sponsored by and really led and coordinated through our Severson Entrepreneurship Academy. We had a similar event last fall. It was the entrepreneurial perspective focused on the oil and gas industry, and that was the first in our series that we had hosted, and we did a similar event like we're having today. That was a much shorter. This is a kind of a day-long event today, but our goal with this and with this series and with these entrepreneurial perspective series is to continue these as we move forward. And so we've already got some planned and some in the works for next year as well, focusing in other industries and other areas as well. But again, the tie that kind of brings these back, and what we really want to kind of think through as we're doing this, is the entrepreneurial perspective. And so that fits in very well with the goals and the aims of the Severson Entrepreneurship Academy here at Minot State. I do want to just recognize a few folks. You're going to hear from one of them a little bit later today, but Clint Severson is here, and Connie Hagerott. Want to recognize Clint and Connie, and they are the benefactors behind the Severson Entrepreneurship Academy, and really have led the vision and kind of the forethought and the idea behind this over the years in getting Minot State to where it is today. We now have a major, we have a minor, we have a certificate in entrepreneurship, and those things didn't exist some years back. And so the connection and the new students that we're turning out and graduates that we're turning out that now have that entrepreneurial perspective and that entrepreneurial focus and that entrepreneurial knowledge and education and those experiences, we weren't doing those things some years back at Minot State University, and now we are. And so it's become a very important part of what we're offering in our business school. Our director is Randy Conway. Randy's in the back, the director of the Severson Entrepreneurship Academy, a longtime business person with private sector experience. So thank you, Randy, for your leadership of the SEA as well. And just a final word before I introduce our first speaker, and that is to thank the MSU Development Foundation. This event today is the two really major connectors of today is the Severson Entrepreneurship Academy and the MSU Development Foundation. And so thank you to the Development Foundation as well for helping make today a reality. So with that, an exciting day and an exciting number of speakers here that we've got, and want to get started with our first speaker of the day. Dr. Mark Hagerott, who hails from a multi-generation family of farmers just outside of Mandan, North Dakota, is the Chancellor of the North Dakota University System, a role that he has held since 2015. Prior to his move back home to North Dakota, Dr. Hagerott served on the faculty and held numerous academic leadership roles at the United States Naval Academy. Chancellor Hagerott also served as a distinguished professor and deputy director of the Center for Cybersecurity Studies at the Naval Academy. Chancellor Hagerott's research and writing are focused on the evolution of technology, education, and changes in technical career paths, and he is the author of multiple articles and book chapters with a recent emphasis on unmanned systems. Prior to his academic career, Dr. Hagerott held numerous leadership positions in the U.S. Navy, both aboard ships and in the Department of Defense. A certified naval nuclear engineer in power generation and distribution, he served as chief engineer for a major environmental project defueling of 2 atomic reactors. He also served in both Bush administrations as a White House fellow under George H.W. Bush and in the office of the Deputy Secretary of Defense in the second Bush administration. Dr. Hagerott earned his bachelor's degree from the U.S. Naval Academy, a master's in political science and economics while studying at Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar, and a PhD in history from the University of Maryland. Please help me welcome someone who has a great interest and passion in this topic, my boss, the Chancellor of the North Dakota University System, Dr. Hagerott.
Me? Oh, great. Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. I asked Steve just to say my name, but he wanted you to know the rest of the stuff. So, let me see. I think, did I leave my notes down there? Second, I need to step off the podium one more time. So I can drink coffee and walk, but can't drink coffee, walk, and grab my papers. So there we are. Well, thanks for coming, and thanks, Steve, and to the Seversons for organizing this, because as you'll see in my slides, we live in epic times. And what I will try to do here is explain to you a framework to think about the world. If it doesn't work for you, then just punt this thing. My boss, by the way, Chair Mahalik of the State Board of Higher Ed. Thank you, sir, for coming. He's a Minot native, former Minot quarterback on the football team, works in the Hoban Bank. But we really appreciate his service. If you don't realize, the State Board, 8 members, controls every square inch and every dollar of the higher ed enterprise of 50,000 students, faculty, and billions of dollars. And so thank you, sir, for being here. So I'll offer this framework to help you situate yourself in this world. But I can just say this, that before the world was dominated by humans and animals, we are now going to share this with advanced robotics and entities in now the metaverse that were really mind-bending. And how we navigate all that was already complicated, but in November of 2022, there's general consensus a major breakthrough occurred in artificial intelligence, leading potentially to artificial generalized intelligence, and just stand by for rapid and epic changes. So, just a little summary slide here. We are going to have new realms of policy, law, ethics, hence the 3 different realms you saw there. The capacity to create wealth will be eye-popping. Some estimates are hundreds of trillions, some thousands of trillions. And if you just want to look at a company called NVIDIA. The graph is like this. It's going to empower militaries like we've never seen before. And I'm going to use some military slides here because, being Minot, just so you know, Minot is the most important U.S. Air Force base in the nation. So if you wonder when you drive by that base, it's got ballistic missiles and bombers. And so you'll see some slides of deriving these models when I was in the Defense Department, watching the evolution of technology and perplexing things happening. And this is where this derived out of 20 years ago. And then I served on the Defense Science Board studying this. But what's unique now is, before technology had limits of how far it could go, how fast it could go, there will be no limits other than what we put on there to basically impinge on humans and nature. All right. I mean, before there was a limit of how far a car could go. They'll have things with solar panels and drones that can hover for 90 days waiting to hunt soldiers on the battlefield before they'd run out of gas and have to land. Human intelligence now is being supplanted. We're going to have to share a world with intelligence. And the main point here for all of you is, for your companies, for yourself, for the students here, you have to think very intentionally about how you're going to live and work in this world. It just, as I learned in the military, hope is not a plan. I hope this works out for my company, myself, my learning, my family. You have to be intentional and really think about this. I was in a conference on this last fall, the Association of Public Land Grant Universities, which is normally kind of a sleeper conference. This topic was artificial intelligence. And in one of the breakouts, one of the leading scientists, I think it was the Microsoft chief scientist, said, the fact that you're here thinking about it means you're going to do much better than the people who aren't thinking about it, which is why, as Steve knows, I've been constantly pushing the 11 campuses here for digital literacy, AI. I was just on a call yesterday that I abstained from a board meeting I was on because they had no requirement for any AI education for students. I said, I cannot vote for this until we come back and put it on there, because this is for the students here. If you could raise your hand if you're a student, by the way, I just want to see how many students. Yeah, we have to do better for you. Okay, you're requiring a lot of us. We're requiring a lot for you to get the world right, but we need to work together. So the outline, basically, the brief here is I'll highlight some developments of AI, AGI, and then you're going to hear from even more expert Shawn Riley and Norman Basil and others. Ryan, I mean, I'm giving you a framework to think about this. I was a cyber professor. I'm a historian of technology, but these guys actually ran civil networks. I ran data networks in the Navy, so you're going to hear even more from them. Offer a framework for you, and then I'll offer a strategy of resilience to go forward. And this last line is not a throwaway line. Okay, a guy named Kevin Kelly, who's written several books called "What Technology Wants" and others, argues this point that we've never had the emergence of intelligent machines. We've had revolutions before. We've had climate change. We've had glaciers. I mean, Minot was covered under 1,000 feet of ice at one point. We've had plagues before, the Black Death. We've had contested elections. We've had civil wars. We have never had this. Ever. We've never had this. And you all are going to have to live through this. And when we're in our nursing homes, please take care of us and don't unplug the machines. Okay. We appreciate you taking care of us, because it's going to fall. We're going to help you, but it's going to mainly fall, I think, on you all to sort this out. Okay. This is not a shock to people. Okay. For people who say, oh my gosh, we never thought about this. People have been thinking about this for a long time. Way back in 1811, the English textile workers were losing their jobs to these looms and mills. And if you ever hear the word Luddite, it's often used in a disparaging way, like, oh, he's such a Luddite. That's not accurate. The Luddites knew technology was coming, but they had to have time to adapt their families and their incomes, because they were basically being driven into poverty. So the Luddites went to London, to Parliament, to say, can you please give us some type of minimum food or some income, because we are being destitute and our families are starving. The London government arrested these people, the moderates. So guess what? The radicals then took over, led by Ned Ludd, and they smashed machines. This resulted in the biggest internal invasion by the British Army ever in the history of the UK to control a technological disruption. It wasn't to control the Irish, it wasn't to control the Scottish, it was technological disruption. The British Army took over, and they made damaging a loom a capital offense where you will be executed. So think of you bashing a window of a Tesla car, and our laws will say, we're going to hang you for that, okay? So interestingly, the elites in London laughed about this and made fun of these workers, but they saw something that now these people have realized. If you didn't notice this, in 2023, for the first time in 2 generations, the actors and writers guilds struck together against Hollywood. And do you know what they struck about? Protecting themselves against AI impersonation. Okay. So what these people talked about, like, hey, our jobs, and they were basically, condescended to. These people 200 years later, like, my gosh, we got to think about labor and relations. And then if you notice, the UAW also had the first strike, I don't know if it's in history, of Chrysler, Ford, and GM all struck at the same time to get protection. So in between were a lot of things going on. The beginning of science fiction about humans and machines is basically Frankenstein. Famous movie here. Anybody here ever seen the movie Space Odyssey 2001? Right, HAL? I mean, that HAL is the word IBM. That was the computer that went nuts, spelled backwards, right? Or move one digit, IBM is HAL. But then things began to happen, literally winning chess, winning the Go, and then ChatGPT goes public. So this has been building, but now the big breakthrough people have been talking about is most likely here or imminent. So you be excited. You're alive when people have been predicting this for 200 years, and here we are. So what are these things real quickly? This is a basic definition from Stuart Russell. There's lots of different definitions, but basically a machine can do what it wants to do. It basically can take actions to achieve its objectives. All right. This would mean if it's a drone hunting a Ukrainian soldier, it goes off and it goes after him. Doesn't need anybody else telling it what to do. If this is an algorithm in cyberspace or the metaverse doing what it's doing, it now can do this without us coding and guiding it along. Now, there's different categories of this. Artificial specialized intelligence is what I worked on in the Navy. I was on a ship called the Aegis ship, where we turned a switch and the machine took over itself. It drove the ship, it shot missiles, it defended itself, but that's all it did. It wasn't going to go to your Facebook profile or your Instagram, wasn't going to trade stocks. But AGI could do all those things. AGI could learn how to run a ship or hack a ship. And we may have Shawn Riley come up toward the end here. There's no questions. We've had a major event in Baltimore with a massive ship. If you haven't seen, how many have seen the video this morning? Shocking video. I drove over that bridge many times. I mean, I took my breath away. I've driven on that bridge. It collapsed in totality when a massive 1,000-foot ship, which should never have lost control, plowed into the stanchion. How did that happen? I think there's an open question about AI and cyber on that event, and we'll see what happens. Everyone's saying it's not terrorism, but it may be a cyber attack. So that's kind of what we've been dealing with as far as definitions. AI has been developing over a long time. It used to be called good old-fashioned AI, with basically, for the mathematicians here, basic logic statements. But then something happened that the logisticians didn't anticipate. And that was, if you got massive compute power, I mean, mega massive machines that are multiple blocks of a city, all the data they've collected across the internet now since 1969, when the internet came alive, with some great software, allowed a new approach, which is called deep learning or neural networks. There was a guy named Rosenblatt who said we should make a machine think like a human, and he was destroyed professionally. He was considered a nut. And then a guy named Geoffrey Hinton kind of resurrected his ideas in the early 90s. And I ran across one of my old books on AI, which is out of print, and there's a chapter. Could this be the new breakthrough? A guy named Geoffrey Hinton building on Rosenblatt. I'm like, oh my gosh, I better hang on to this book. This is someone in the 90s predicting what happened. And basically that is neural networks based on large language models. And so you'll see some acronyms, generative pre-trained transformer. What a mouthful. Basically it's a learning algorithm is what that is. And it broke through on something like ChatGPT. And if you think the elites in Silicon Valley have a plan that they're going to save us, banish it from your mind. The co-founder of ChatGPT at OpenAI is from North Dakota. I don't know if you know that, a guy named Brockman. He came to UND. His mom and dad are teachers there. He gave a talk with his line of bodyguards, by the way. Yeah. And I was able to watch him. I've got, in those notes, I've got 8 pages of notes. I furiously wrote everything he wrote in case they wouldn't live stream. Enough they did. But he said that this little algorithm, they didn't know what to do with. And Thanksgiving of 2022, they were just going to shut it down. And someone said, put it online, see what happens. He said, our business plan. So if anybody tells you to write a business plan and they want you to have 100% certainty on your business plan, for the business people I'm talking about, you got to write this business plan. They thought they would have about 500 users. It became the single biggest internet application on the history of the planet. But these scientists, these Geoffrey Hinton mentored peoples, Sutskever was Hinton's protege, 500 people, and it's changed the world. So what I take away is if you think these people have a plan, they don't, because this is going so fast and so complex. And the other thing is, I'll show a picture of 20 of these experts at the table. I don't think anyone have ever served in the military. I think only one was a professor. They are narrow computer scientists. How will they frame your life, North Dakota, or any other big questions? We all need to be involved in this. There's no cavalry coming. This is going to be created jointly amongst us. So this is now looking like it's going to pass the Turing test, getting pretty close. We'll leave it to Shawn Riley and some of the speakers to say if they think it's did or not. But interestingly, in 17 May 2023, about 12 Microsoft scientists signed a paper together saying they think it's had a breakthrough. And the reason they signed it all together is about 3 years ago, someone at Google wrote the same thing and he was fired for making such a statement. So to go from 2020, where someone said, I think my AI algorithm is becoming self-aware, that they fired that engineer, and by 2023, a dozen people at Microsoft say, we think it's showing signs of self-awareness. So anyway, if it's not there yet, we have had such a massive redirection of this money in compute and talent, I have no doubt we're going to have a breakthrough of some sort. Altman of OpenAI just traveled to the Middle East in February, and they're looking at I believe it's $1 trillion moonshot. $1 trillion on AI. The Saudis want in it. I already know one of our campuses here, one of our computer scientists has been poached back to Saudi Arabia. He's still on the rolls here, but I can imagine what the Saudis are paying him right now to work on their AI initiative. So it's off to the races. Okay, so let's get to, I'm not sure what happened. Okay, so how to situate this, okay? All these AI people working on AI, but this is all connected to this. 2021, Zuckerberg comes out and renames his company because he wants a metaverse. At the same time, the White House, literally 2021, they're a few days apart, going, we need a Bill of Rights for you in the age of AI. Well, that's a head scratcher. What does all that mean, right? Then you have this begin to develop. Elon Musk rolls out robots that will be the price of a car. But then he says, we need to put a hold on AI or we're going to lose control of this. I mean, this is scattered, crazy stuff, right? I mean, if 5 years ago you'd say those would be the headlines, you'd get an F on your paper, right? If you'd say, this is where I think this is going, and yet these are the headlines. So how do you situate this? This is what I would suggest, that basically the world started like this, humans and nature, riding horses, plowing fields, and then we began to have the development of intersection of humans and machines teaming together. Think of tractors and whatnot. This then became advanced robotics, and that was manageable, I think. But then you had this thing called the metaverse, the integration of humans and cyberspace. That's mind-bending. We didn't see that coming until about 1984. And so this is the world we have to navigate now, is creating wealth, following policy, I think laws where humans here are unaided by technology. Does anybody here not have contacts on? We have contacts? No? Okay, if I take my glasses off, we are now interacting as non-technologically aided humans. If I shut this microphone off, we still need to preserve that world. Could be lots of business applications for that too. We'll have a slide on student health, but so much else of this is going to be the intersection of these worlds where we create wealth and secure our country and lead a better life. So what is the challenge here? That's the challenge I see. We have to have creative people, those who are business majors and whatnot. We have to create these technologies. We can't become a museum society. But we have to control them. Absolutely imperative that we are in control of these technologies. Otherwise, we may have had what just happened this morning. Okay, we'll see. But you can imagine all the hacking, privacy abuses, and this relates to civilized technology. This is why the president has established a request for a new Bill of Rights, and the president has signed out the biggest executive order in history of the presidency, 100 pages on how to think about AI. But then for the teachers here, any professors here? Any faculty? Okay, thank you for being here. You've got to regenerate the next generation, right? Because eventually, unless we have radical life extension, we're not going to be here and they're going to have to take over. So basically, this is the mission we have. And there's a limit of what I can go into, but we now have to add AI onto this whole thing to think about AI penetrating all this. And if it becomes self-aware, we're really off to the races. So are there any theories that can help us, right? When I've given this talk before, I've asked people, they've got theories of religion. You know, I'm Catholic, I'm Muslim, I'm Jewish, I'm atheistic. I have theories of politics, Republican, Democrat, though interesting, something related to technology has just emerged. The head of the FCC is a fairly radical liberal lady, and her name, I think, is Cron. The right-wing conservatives are allying with her, and they are along with her in the lawsuit that's just happened with Apple. If you didn't follow, the president has now sued Apple Corporation, and the state of North Dakota has joined President Biden. Okay, don't fall out of your chair, okay? Do you see how weird this world is? Our Attorney General, Drew Wrigley, consultation with, I'm sure, our justices and the governor, have, along with 18 states, joined Biden to sue Apple for non-competitive practices, and radical liberals and conservatives in Congress have come together on that. They are developing a theory of technology and politics, and that's what I want to offer to you, that you should think about. There are a lot of theories out there. I don't have time to go into all of them, but one of them I can just mention is momentum theory, that if the first generation to deal with the new technology does not really think about this and get it right, it locks in. And all you have to do is think about the Great Northern Railway, where it comes through Minot. No one's going to put it up, in Tioga. It's going to go through Minot because these rail lines are here and all the rest are here. Same thing with the freeways we put down. Same thing with technology. If you don't get it more right than wrong in the early part, it has a tendency to lock in. All right, Mike, how am I doing on time? I'm looking for my timekeeper. Mike Linnell, I'm doing okay? Okay, so I'll start speeding this up here a little bit, because what I've found is if you don't back up your stuff with some facts and data and historical reality, it's like, well, it's a theory. So I'm going to derive what I've talked about from historical military cases and then apply it to civil society, agriculture. I will then also share with you that when we moved from human animal-centered world into a machine world, it was cataclysmic. Okay, you all are here saying this world's nice, but if you were there when the Luddites were there, or the coal miners, it was cataclysmic. And I'll show you a couple slides on what happened in North Dakota. And then we'll reflect on this a little bit and tell you what the state board's trying to do on this topic. So think about how things were before machines, and I'm using military analogy. This is an ancient 1,000-year-old painting, I think it's a Bayeux tapestry, of showing warfare. A shield, a weapon in the hand, strong legs, and it was agility, it was energy, and that's how people fought, right? You've all seen these movies, Gladiator and other movies. But humans were sensing the battlefield, they were thinking about it, and then they were taking action, right? They were essentially what would be called cybernetics, and that's one of the theories of what humans and machines are becoming, is cybernetic. And this is what we did, right? Well, then that was about the case for 15,000 years. For 15,000 years, this is kind of how it was, okay? And so think about this. The role of machines there and humans here, 15,000 years, this is kind of how warfare was. And then things began to happen, okay? We started entering technological innovation. And if you had a longer brief, you'd show all these inventions going up. I have one slide on that. But eventually, by World War I, this is one of the first tanks. They had to protect humans from weapons. They had to protect them and shield them. They had to give them internal combustion engines. So now the integration of human machine. I was an Afghan veteran. I was there. We still had to have meetings. I wasn't there at the time, but these Marines are meeting. You notice they took off their dark glasses and they're talking about the fate of their village. So, and this is, I hate to say this is what's happening in Gaza and Israel right now. They can have all the high-tech weapons, but in the end, it's going to come down to the Gazan people, the Israeli people figuring this out, right? So warfare is becoming additive. Here's the waves of these innovations. These are all major breakthroughs: the catapult, the galley, gunpowder. Literally, the world changed when one Navy adopted machines, gunpowder. One tried to keep fighting with shields. Won't have too much going there. Ironclads, the South was defeated, as we'll get into, because of the industrial strength of the North. The South was just as brave, if not braver. The submarine machine gun, you notice all these things are like learning curves and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you get first computers, you get the computerized air defenses here in Minot for the Cold War, and then finally drone wars. If you haven't followed what's happened in Ukraine and Russia, 3 years ago, before the war started, the estimates on military drone production was about 10,000 military drones a year. The estimate is 1 million a year. China, Russia, they're going full into automated robotic warfare. And our own Secretary of Defense 3 months ago rolled out the replicator strategy. A Fargo business that builds drone components has had 100% increase. 100%. This is Terry Zimmerman Botlink. This is now the war of robots and AI. Okay, so this is the way to think about the world, right? Humans, machines, and now robots going after robots and unfortunately humans. So think of situating that, okay? But then this also, before you get too down on machines, also led to a massive humanitarian correction in our history. Before you had machines, the Southern United States did this to human beings. This is in Jamaica as part of the whole slave trade and rum trade. I mean, I almost get choked up thinking what they did to these people, 4 million people until 1865. When the war came, led by churches, by the way, so I know this is radical. I know a lot of people say the churches shouldn't be involved in politics. The churches led the abolition movement. Thank God for the churches, because the businessmen did not want this war, okay? But when it came to war, it's quite clear the South could fight just as well, but the North produced so much output from machines they were able to outproduce the South. So the machines, the engineers, you engineers here, you saved the world from terrible, terrible conditions. And so thanks for the machines. But here in North Dakota, this happened with my family. This is my grandfather here. I got more of my grandmother and my mom's genes. He was this massive man, and he literally took the bull by the horns. Right? He'd go into the corral, and he would do this. It was incredible, right? This was his uncle when they came to North Dakota, horses and rudimentary machines. So they were pre-machine age, basically. No internal combustion machines, no steam engines. This now is them with the steam engine, right? They merged, they went from human nature to machines. And my grandfather is right there, okay? There's 20 men. They're not dumb. They're hiding from the sun during threshing time, right? So they're in the back. You can't really see them, but they're all along there, okay? 20 human beings with a tractor. And what did this tractor then lead to? Eventually, my grandfather did the harvest by himself in 1938. My grandmother took the photo. 20 men replaced by one man with a Rumley tractor and a Ford truck. So that seems fantastic, right? Okay. And this leads to the world we have now, right? I should probably have someone with horse husbandry or cattle, but think of that. Think of these machines. This is all great. But something happened that Brad Smith, no less, also talked. Brad Smith is the CEO of Microsoft. He came to Fargo a couple of years ago, talked about his book. He said, the unintended consequences of the emergence of this realm led to this. Okay. This is the number of horses. Okay. Horses were here, red on the right. So 27 million horses before 1910 were in the fields. The Hagerotts were innovators. They got one of the first steam tractors in 1910. This is the number of tractors, red on the left. So tractors go from 0 in 1910 to, by 1938, when I showed you, they were up to 1.5 million, almost 2 million. Horses and donkeys had been going up in population since the Ice Age. So think about this. My great-grandfather was a little bit of denial when his son said, we got to get more tractors and more tractors. He's like, it's horses, it's horses. He wasn't a dumb man. The frame of reference for 15,000 years is horses and hay and oats. So what Brad Smith points out is when all these horses go away, okay, when all these horses go away and they become, like pets, basically, decimated, 1/10, basically, from 30 million to 3. What happens for are there any farmers in here? No farmers, okay. Well, you got to keep making money. So when you can't sell your hay or your oats because the horses are all gone, you shift to cash crops. And when that shift happened, Brad Smith, and I would agree with him, led to a disruption in the economy, which led to the collapse of the rural banks, which led to the Great Depression, which led to the collapse of the international order, the rise of Nazism, fascism, empowered communism, because the system was collapsing. And the first impact were tractors, a technological disruption. And for those of you who have grandparents, listen to your grandparents, because my grandmother gave me this tip in 1975. I was working on the farm, and I was complaining because I would haul the wheat to town. I felt so empowered as a teenager, with 300 bushels on the truck. But she goes, this is such a blessing, because wheat was $4 a bushel. She goes, Mark, in 1928, wheat was 23 cents a bushel. And I thought, oh, my grandma, the Great Depression didn't come till 29. She's got the dates wrong. No, she was right. Wheat went from $2 a bushel to 23 cents. Does any business person here think they could keep a business going when your product drops by 90%? 75% of North Dakotans were on public assistance. 75%. The Bank of North Dakota would not foreclose on you. And Governor Langer called out the National Guard to stop the Minneapolis bankers from taking your grandparents' land. This is North Dakota. And Governor Langer was imprisoned. The federal marshals put the governor of North Dakota in prison for what he was doing. So it was chaos, okay? And the point is, if that's what happens with merely the emergence of a tractor, what's this going to mean, okay? So it affected where we live. That's the Crown Butte School where my grandfather went to school. This is where my mom and dad went to school. Small villages that have been the basis of our economy changed. And that was merely the emergence of machines and depopulation of small villages. That's what that was. Then came along the surprise of the internet. it wasn't predicted really until 1984 that we have now by a guy named Gibson. But if you were in this class, you could draw the internet back in 1980, right? You got to be able to memorize about 20 nodes and where they are. These are the undersea cables, which, by the way, right now are under attack. They're under attack right here. They've cut this cable already, the Houthis. So the Navy's working hard to keep the system going. But this is almost unimaginable. What is the internet, right? So anyway, thinking about the world you're in, I would say for the military people here, if there's any Minot airmen, you're now in a world of this convoluted, complex state of warfare. And Gaza just reminds us again that it's still human, it's machine, it's cyber, it's robotic. And I hope we can let 7 million Jews have a country, okay? There's a billion Christians, there's a billion Muslims, but I hope those people can have a place they can live safely. They're trying. The UN just voted for a ceasefire. And again, I'm not political, but they are in this right now. Cyber weapons, drone weapons. And in fact, if you look at October 7th, when the Hamas broke through, they defeated the Israeli robots. Go back and look what happened. It's fascinating. They should have had 10,000 Israeli soldiers on that border. Instead, they over-automated. No one's criticizing it right now, but I'm an advisor on the Secretary of Navy's advisory board, and we had a conference on this. They over-trusted in that. They literally had Gatling guns on the border, and the Hamas neutralized them, and there were not enough soldiers to stop them. You know, epic confusion of warfare. But anyway, this is higher ed, okay? This is after COVID hit. Massive explosion in online, all this wealth, right? This is agriculture, and we've got someone working at the ag school right now on advanced technology. This is Grand Farm, right? North Dakota's got one of the leading programs in automated technology for farming. Though we still have the cattle, right? We still have working with animals and humans. We never let my granddaughter see when they take some of the cattle to slaughter, just so you know, she's too young for that yet. She picks out her favorite calves and like, don't tell her what's going to happen next year, right? But it's great to have a nice steak, isn't it? This is our power grid, right? I mean, this is for any people. The governor gave a talk at the prayer breakfast on Friday morning, and he goes, we just take it for granted we turn that light switch on. All the people that keep this system going, all the electrons, the people on night shift, it's an incredible complex integration of humans and machines. This is Bobcat, right? Bobcat now has got highly automated lines, but you still have workers and engineers. So you've got to think about the world in these ways. And then this is medical technology. If you haven't seen, the EU has just signed out their guidelines for AI, okay? If you've got a blocker for something like spam filter, they say go full AI. But if you're about to go under the knife, the requirements before a robot, and Shawn, he'll tell you more. I mean, it's like gold standard. It's Cadillac, right? It's Mercedes-Benz. And so they're thinking about you. And interesting, the Washington Post came out with an article saying, you know, it's time for our U.S. Congress to just take a sheet from the Europeans. Don't rework it. It's very thoughtful. But we'll see. So anyway, how do you then situate AI, right? And again, we might have a difference of opinion. Some people want to just let it go, and others want to control. So Mike, how am I doing? How many minutes do you say? Still okay? I'll move it up a little. That means go faster. Okay, I'll go through this faster. Okay, this is what you're going to negotiate, right? Where is this box? Okay, I'm telling you, sadly, the Russians are now releasing their drones full auto. I was at the Geneva Convention 10 years ago this May, and I argued we need to get arms control on drones and killing machines because it is inevitable where this is going. And the Russians realized if they kept it linked by a human, okay, so think of a drone linked to a human, so we had moral agency, the Ukrainians could jam the signal. But if you let the machine just do its thing, you load a photo of who you wanted to kill, it's off to the races. So you'll see one of the last slides I have. We have a big initiative for North Dakota to help the Air Force on the whole drone challenge. We think it is going to be epic, and North Dakota is uniquely positioned between Minot's Air Force Base, Grand Forks Air Force Base, and the National Guard. But think about that. So then it could be lesser cases. You know, do you let AI go through your daughter's Facebook profiles and collect all the information? And then someone can pay it to bully her? Is that okay? You all have to sort these questions out, right? But how would I suggest you approach this? Okay. I would approach this that you want to have resilience in wherever you're going, okay? You want to have resilient systems here, here, and here, and then the overlap, okay? And obviously this morning in Baltimore, they did not have a resilience navigation system, so we need to say more about resilience, okay? And so I'll click through what I mean by resilience. Day to day, we have to have absolute reliability, and this is mainly in Shawn's world of cyber attack, which may again just happen. That if you don't have the protection of your data and your people, nothing else is going to matter. So if you're in a company, in fact, there's a guy named Barry Batchelor who sold his company for a large sum to, I think, John Deere. He told me the biggest issue, the tallest pole in the tent was the cyber certification. That his intellectual property was safe, his data was safe. That's the longest thing it took to sell his company. So build it in from the beginning. And this is also just necessary for teachers to pass knowledge to the next generation. And I won't talk about entropy right now, but you can Google that. Okay, next level is you have to have the ability to adapt. Okay, if you're building a company or you have people who are willing to question things and how can we do things differently. And this is an example when COVID came. We had a great system, and Shawn Riley helped build that. We were able to go online. We had adaptable systems. But then lastly, you have to preserve the ability to transform. And I'll just leave you with one line. If you think, transformation is only adaptation, continuous improvement of the candle did not lead to the light bulb. We can all figure that out, right? It's completely different. And people kept saying, better wax, better wicks. All right. So situate yourself in where you'd be in this situation here. And I'll just give you a quick example of a business. How many of you know Bushel? You know Bushel Corporation? Okay. This is 2 North Dakota guys who basically were watching how people were hauling the grain to market, et cetera, et cetera. They now, with their app, are handling half the grain sales in the United States of America, okay? And this is what they did. They thought of their grandfather and their dad hauling wheat, right? Something that Google people don't think about, wheat and corn in a grain elevator, getting in a truck, going to the elevator. But then how did they link to their markets, deposit their money, hedge their prices? So they basically built an app that connected grandpa and their dad in a wheat truck, going to the elevator to the Minneapolis grain markets. You could sell them, you could hedge with an app. They didn't have to have a paper check in their truck. They now handle half the grain in America. And they were able to get the trademark for the word bushel. The Google people do not understand our economy. They understand big data and a few other things. So they took some problem in America, in North Dakota, applied these advanced technologies, situated those 3 things together. Essentially where they ended up was right there, the intersection of humans, machines, and data, and they hit the sweet spot. So what would I suggest going forward? We have to all partner together, and that's why a couple slides at the end. We need to preserve ultimate human control in this situation, and you have to protect your employees, their security, and their vitality, their creativity, and I'll show you a couple slides of why I'm concerned about that. I already mentioned this, that we have to think about our future, because these are all the 20 technologists that met with the US Senate, and if you remember, Zuckerberg doesn't like Musk. Do you know that? They've threatened to box each other. So here's Elon Musk here, and Zuckerberg is right over there. They put him on the opposite ends. But I'll be blunt, a lot of these people are childish people. I mean, seriously, Musk has had 4 common law wives. I think he has 10 children. What does he know about social stability? And we're going to ask him to create a better North Dakota for you, okay? And so you all have a role. And that's what I'm saying here, that we as North Dakotans have to think about this, okay? The other thing is just security. This is a cyber image I've used for a lot of time. These are the battles that happen every day. This could be when Shawn was running the IT system, but this just happened. How many heard about this deep fake in Hong Kong? Raise your hand. A deep fake in Hong Kong dialed up a mid-level employee in the finance office of a company and had an image of the CEO and the CFO and somebody else saying, hey, we've got a purchase we're making, we need $25 million to transfer. It was all AI generated. So the first deep fake has happened to literally defraud a company of $25 million. So security is absolutely essential. The last thing is essential is the security and welfare of yourself, your families, and employees. When the industrial age hit, this is a famous painting by Hans Thoma. Remember how the Greek architecture is, Michelangelo's architecture, right? These incredibly healthy young men and women, always clear-eyed. And he took that and said, this is the depression that's starting with industrialization. And they had this phrase, anomie, which was losing connection, being lonely, being depressed, suicide rates going up. And that's why we have today the YMCA, the YLWCA, the Columbus, Knights of Columbus. These are all entities to help people feel together when they move to the cities. Well, it's happening again. How many people have followed this influencer? Anybody raise your hand? Okay. What do you think of her? Nice looking girl? She's a robot. She's not even real. And for those of you who want to run a company or government, what is her work ethic she's conveying to your people? Is she saying, don't show up? I mean, thank God the snowplow people showed up. The state patrol people show up. They have an ethic that they come and take care of us. Does she tell people to do that, right? So if you don't think these effects are real on human beings, this is a slide my wife gives. She's a former K-12 teacher, and we've given this talk starting 11 years ago. It is now clear that excessive use of iPhones and the internet will have effects on these 4 systems. I just gave this talk at Mayville, and the senior nursing director stood up and said, we need to see more of your wife's slides because she's watching this happen to her students and her own kids. That if you're in a game world playing a game all the time, and you're getting all this endorphin release, and then your significant other wants to watch the sunset and hold your hand, and you're like, this is just not doing it for me. It's not her fault, it's not your fault. You literally have been dopamine flooded, and the normal things don't work, okay? This is well documented. But also, you then feel less tranquil, you feel agitated, then your memory starts to be affected, right? Because which world am I in, right? As a cyber professor, it hit me one time because we're in this classroom with students. We then at our desktop, then we went into the cyber realm, and then you hack in another realm. There was in 4 dimensions at one time. And I'm like, I got out of it going, oh my gosh. And we've already found that about 10% of people can't learn with Oculus glasses, right? It disorients them. So your memory system, learning system. So just be careful with your employees and yourself on where you go with this stuff. I'm down to the last 2 slides now. And lastly, I'd say, don't be intimidated by the technologist. Stuart Russell has said, they will not be able to solve this problem. It's going to be basically a cultural event. And he said the bigger fear is not the Terminator scenarios, it's this movie. Ever seen the movie WALL-E? I've never laughed so hard except that movie when the captain finally stands up and confronts the robot. But it's basically going to be, indifference. It's a lack of creativity. We become overly dependent. He thinks that's the challenge. And he said we really got to create what he said is basically a military Spartan ethic of work and self-reliance. Okay, you've already heard about that, but I want to show you just 3 slides of what we're doing in North Dakota. Right now, we're working on grand energy, because if you're going to go in the energy industry, and Kevin Black is here in Minot, he's the lead for this, it's going to have to be increasingly automated, connected, cyber secure, artificial intelligence, and we recognize that. And so we are working hard for those of you in the oil industry on this initiative right now. The overarching thing, we're calling it retool and upskill now, North Dakota. I mean, you've got to retool your equipment, but also you've got to upskill yourself. This is not a time to just go on pause or coast. The next thing is national security. The drone wars are coming. They're here. This is a map of North Dakota, if you can see this. This is Minot here. This is Grand Forks. We have a large National Guard testing center, but also connecting with the Canadians. They are very close allies. If you've never heard this word, Five Eyes, we share all of our information basically with Canada, very unique country, and then 4 other countries. And so North Dakota is uniquely positioned. So we're talking about advanced classes, research, whatnot, to help the Air Force. And then the last one is big data for North Dakota. These large language models are massively influential. Anybody heard about the Gemini catastrophe with Google's Gemini? Okay. It was so biased, they had to shut it down. The CEO of Google had to apologize. We believe in the university system. We need an in-state capability to do the research we need to do, support the higher ed system, okay? Higher ed, NDUS, K-12, state, local government, but then private businesses. We've already had 3 roundtables with business people. That's why I want to put on a slide in front of you, business people. And it's been universally supportive because they can see their profits basically going out of the state if we're paying everybody else to use their large language models. So I think that was it. Oh, it's better when you can see it, the servers and whatnot. So, Mike, I'll stop there. I don't know how far I went over. So do we have any time for any questions? Okay. So do we have any questions on anything I said? And feel free to disagree with me and offer your alternative view. Yes.
Hey, thank you so much for coming, Dr. Hagerott. My name's Travis Smith. I'm founder of C Students LLC. One of the questions I had for you was, as a student at Minot State, I spent some time on the student government advocating to the faculty and Dr. Shirley to allow and enable students to use AI in all of our activities, from campus clubs to classrooms, wherever we are, specifically generative AI, but whenever we're enabled other forms of AI as well. Do you think that with some of the challenges that we will be facing in AI in the future, that individuals being able to use their own AI models, whether it's on our devices we carry or ones we access in the cloud, will be able to counter some of those issues?
Yeah, it's a great question. And say your last statement, what would counter what? Another AI, is that what you said? Oh, yeah. So how much can humans push back and protect ourselves with AI, would you say? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Right. We have to be able to use this. If you don't realize, the reason China had a bad 500 years, literally, China was the world superpower. They had a bad 500 years. And you know what happened? They forbid ocean-going exploration. Their fleet in 1450 went all the way to Africa. Think if they had colonized the West. But their political leaders are like, this is dangerous. They're bringing ideas back. So they literally fired the admirals and burned the ships. And then along came the Europeans with cannons. So if we do not develop AI in the United States, we're going to be speaking a different language because it is an arms race now. It is truly an arms race. And one of my best students, I'll even say his name, is Tom Wester. He was #1 in Annapolis. I identified him as a brilliant kid freshman year. He didn't know he was that good. He ended up at the Defense Innovation Unit, and they briefed me on a concept they had several years ago that the United States, our allies, Europeans that have generally common held values better win the AI race, because whoever wins that, those values will be defining. So do you want Western democratic ideas, as imperfect as they are, that allows you to innovate, do things, be different, or the Chinese Communist Party is using AI for surveillance. I mean, they literally are using it, and Shawn can go. I mean, there are two different views of this. So we have to go forward. I would just put one caveat on learning. The Chronicle of Higher Ed had an article by a student. He was a senior. And guess what he was concerned about? The freshmen. How many here are seniors? Okay. How many are freshmen? Freshmen yet? Okay. This is what he said. He was watching the freshmen in his computer science class, not learning the fundamentals of coding and just having ChatGPT do it. And he goes, that's fine once you're a senior or a graduate student because you understand basically what's happening. But they're going to lose those years of formative learning and not really understand what's going on. Same thing with creative writing, okay? That you want those creative. So I would say limit what AI does for you in your creative processes, and then have it augment you on other things, I thought. Other question. There's the light, it's hard to see. Yeah.
Yeah. My name's Jacob Jensen. I guess to follow up with that, with the AI arms race, should we? I know you were talking about like legislatives, with the government talking about like slowing down AI development. Do you think we should slow it down, or should we continue like the pace that we're going at?
Yeah, it's well, there's been a civil war in OpenAI. If you want to Google the guy Sutskever I told you about, the chief scientist. So OpenAI is the leader on artificial intelligence. Microsoft owns 49%. Elon Musk is suing OpenAI. Um, right before Thanksgiving, the board, led by Sutskever, who was Jeffrey Hinton's protege, voted out Altman. And he was out of control, going too fast. He wasn't being cautious. Well, guess what the board is made up of now? They're all gone. Altman's back. Okay. So it shows you there are contested views of what's going on here. And I wouldn't be surprised if Altman is in top secret meetings in the Pentagon of how can we go faster because we've got to win this thing, right? But I was when I was on the stage back in DC for a conference with Eric Schmidt was there, General Mattis was there, and I was honored that I was there because I've been thinking about this weird stuff for years. But it was about you. It was about critical human thinking in the age of AI. Like, how would you even know it's true anymore, right? And a very high-ranking official, like the number 2 at one point of our Defense Department, said, we probably need at least one AI arms agreement with the Chinese and the Russians, and that is AI and automated cyber war. Everything else will just kind of sort out, what happens in Hollywood. But he said, if we unleash powered AI with cyber tools, we could take down everything. And you can watch a video. NSA proved you could destroy a diesel generator with a cyber hack. You just go reversed, forward, back about 10 times and the thing blow up. You could, with an unmitigated cyber AI attack, blow up the diesel generators, the turbines, lock the turbines in the Garrison Dam. We've taken so many people out of the loop now, there wouldn't be people there in time to override it probably. And so that was the one thing he said, is this will not be good for China, Russia, us, for the lights to go dark in the winter. So I would say we're in a race. Americans, NATO need to win it, but we probably need to be in a race that doesn't include losing control of our infrastructure. So do we have any other time? Otherwise, I was going to mention to Shawn Riley to come up briefly about this cyber thing, or Mike, do you need to get on with your lightning round? It's up to you. So what I want to ask Shawn to come up for is, if you haven't seen the news, it's shocking. I used to drive over that bridge, the Francis Scott Key Bridge. So in my mind, I have not ruled out cyber attack. Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner. How coincidental that we had a ship a few hours ago drive right into the Francis Scott Key Bridge and knock it down. Now, I'm a former ship captain, and then I'll stop and let you go. But when a ship is leaving port, it's called restricted maneuvering. And I can tell you, all your naval ships bring every generator online, all of them. On the ships I was on, we had 6 2,500 kW generators. You split the bus so you cannot have a cascading casualty. You split the steam plants or the gas turbine plants so that each propeller is completely independent of the other one. The bridge has backup power. And we put a human in after steering that if something happens, they take rheostat control, or if need be, they have a crank back there, okay? And if you look at what happened, and then I'll turn it over to our cyber expert, the ship, the lights went out and the rudder went over hard right. That should not happen. And it went right into the piling, killed unknown number of people, and dropped the entire bridge, which will disrupt the whole East Coast corridor. And the harbor of Baltimore is shut down. It is the largest harbor for all automotive imports, with one turn of the rudder. So now I'll let you think about what might have happened.
Okay, so this is completely ad-libbed. I have no idea what exactly Mark was going to ask me to, except that he's going to have me up here. Mark has the capability this morning to be able to tell you all the evil potentials, right, of AI. And that is one of the fun things about this, is that every single technology has this capability to be amazingly empowering and amazingly wrong, right? Anybody in here use pocket knife? Come on, get some hands, right? I usually have one on my hip. I don't today, right? How many of you have stabbed someone? Not so many people. All right. I won't comment on my own situation. Maybe 3 people. I don't know, maybe 4. The reality is right now is artificial intelligence, as it's being used, is being used in such a way where it is incredibly dangerous and incredibly empowering at the same time. That ship, right, that ship that may potentially have been attacked through a cyber attack, or maybe the computer just went haywire, or maybe it's something completely different. It's only happened 9 hours ago, so we don't entirely know yet. But the capability today is to be able to run that ship with way fewer people than it used to require. We're able to do it much more efficiently, much more effectively, and the thousands and thousands of ships around the world are able to add to the production of the world, and to be able to get all of you guys the clothes you're wearing, mostly from China, right? And to be able to get you all your phones. I see everybody's got their phones, mostly from China, right? To be able to bring that stuff from there to here in an efficient way and lower the cost of goods and make it a commodity so that everybody everywhere, regardless of how much money you make, can pretty much get it. The other side is I can take over the damn ship. I can knock off the power grid. I can turn the rudder right and can smash it into a bridge. That is the real world that we're really working in right now. That same efficiency and effectiveness that gives you all the capacity to be able to have an evolved economy also today has the capability of being really, really dangerous. So, Mark, does that cover? Like I said, this is purely on the spot. So yeah, I'll talk again this afternoon. I'm going to bring the happy side of AI this afternoon. A little more of the empowering side, a little less of death and carnage. I can definitely do death and carnage, but Ryan is like master lord of death and carnage. So maybe we'll get to that later. So any questions?
That's the reality, right? We want to grow food, we want to make life better, but
we'll have our lightning round here in just a couple minutes. Darren, are you up on the lightning round? Chad, come up to the stage, please.
Hello. We did have planned for a little break, but that little ad lib session kind of carried us a little bit. But first of all, I wanted to say thank you to everybody for coming, and thank you especially to our speakers and our guests today that have made the trip in and participated in this. Welcome to Minot State, and thank you for coming. I wanted to talk a little bit about our MIS program here at Minot State. So Management Information Systems. It is the area in which I teach over at the College of Business. We are currently designated as a certified Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense through the NSA and through Department of Homeland Security. So getting our MIS degree in comparison to our CS degree is a little more non-technical. It's more of the managerial side of it, the business side of it. So you've heard discussions of the importance of that, because the way I always look at it is technology is very important, but it's only important if the business needs it, right? If we have no data, we have no need for technology. We have no information. We have no reason to have computers make things easier, faster, more productive. But because of the need for business to use technology and leverage technology to be more productive, more efficient, and more profitable, then we need the technical piece. But from the management side, we're looking at how we can use technology and abilities and make them drive the business and make the business more profitable. So as you look at the different offerings we have at Minot State, that MIS degree brings you more into that non-technical managerial side, if that's kind of the area you're looking to get into. But if you're looking at more of that technical side, then we'll have Mr. Seifert talk on the computer science side later. And then the other offering we have at Minot State too that's related to technical and cyber is our new program inside of data science. Now, the other thing to remember too is at Minot State we have certificates, we have minors, we have majors. So if you're looking to get information or looking to get enrolled or start looking at gathering these different skills, either to reskill, upskill, or even start a new degree, please go ahead and look at the Minot State website, look at our different offerings that we have, and take a good look, and then reach out to us and let us know what you'd be interested in getting into. Okay, now on that quick little spiel about us, the next person I'd like to bring up is an old MIS alumni graduate from Minot State. His name is Dustin Miller. He's here in Minot. He is owner or one of the owners of Pro IT. He also does a little bit on the side, but I'm sure he's not going to talk too much about that. But he also likes to do a little bit of Family Feud, and I know the students are well aware of the Family Feud because you guys have participated in that as it's been done on campus as well. But it shows you also that personality goes a long way along with business, right? He's putting himself out there. He's got all these technical skills, but he's also got the personal skills that go with it. So it's a big piece of that. And as you hear Dustin, or if you get a chance to talk to Dustin, he'll be one of the first ones to tell you it's great if you can program and do it really well. But if I got to put you in a dark little room and you can never talk to anybody, not really that good or effective as a team environment, right? So one of the things you want to do is have that personal skill as well. And Dustin is unbelievably personable person. He's great at what he does. He's built up a very successful business here in Minot at Pro IT. And without any more introduction to it, Dustin.
Thank you, Chad. All right, my name is Dustin Miller. I'm one of the co-founders of Pro IT. A little background. After college, graduated 2004. For the next less than a decade, it's pretty much the industry that I was in was a break fix industry. You know, cybersecurity was a thing, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. About in 2010, we wanted to get into be a managed service provider, an MSP. So managed services is a proactive support rather than a reactive support. We want to get into the industry where instead of a client calls us and just wants us to fix something, you know, how do we get ahead of it? How do we have the right software in place to make sure that we are ahead of the issues and problems? So the big thing that we're looking for is an RMM software, which is remote management and monitoring. With that, how do you find the right solution? If you guys are ever out shopping for something, how do you know that your first choice is the best one? You're going to have a salesperson come through and they're going to try to pitch why their product is the best. How do you choose that product and why? So we had probably at the time in 2010 when we started looking at this kind of avenue, there was probably 3 players out in the industry. The biggest player was Level Platforms. The other 2 were Enable, and the other one was LabTech through ConnectWise. At the time, we joined a peer-to-peer group, which is like a 2020 group. So it's other IT companies across the country that we work with, and we just kind of, it's nice we can leverage those guys and groups because of the industry that they're in. So they're going to tell you what works, what doesn't work, what's the cost point, what's the support like, what's happening, what's transitioning. At the time when we were going through them, Level Platforms was getting purchased out by AVG, and we heard nothing but negative things. It's expensive. Again, for us, what's the level of support and what's the cost and how are we going to pass it on to our clients? We ended up going with LabTech, which is through ConnectWise, which was pretty good. That's where we started with that in probably 2010. We started Pro IT in 2013. That was for the private sector that we worked in. We went off on our own, a group of 3 of us. We went off and we started 2013. Again, we wanted to be one of the best MSPs that we could be and develop it. So going into these clients that we have, and we are probably half of North Dakota, Central and West North Dakota, into Montana as well for our client base. And we would literally work with everybody. When we first started doing everything, it was kind of a la carte. So we have a stack of software that we're using to say that we want to present to you guys as the client. And we'd let you pick and choose what you want. We'd explain what everything was and to why you would need it, but we didn't really force anything upon anybody because of, you know, usually people's IT budgets are smaller than what they should. So we go through and we would give different solutions and they say, I want this, this, and this. Again, we would do it, but stuff happens. So I'll give you a couple examples that we've had. Probably about 5 years ago, some of our clients, they would manage their own Microsoft 365 platform. So if they want to do it, they save $5 a user per month and it comes out to a couple $100 a month. We let them go with it. So we just let them do it. So we had a solution before everything Microsoft enabled, made sure you have to have 2-factor enabled for everything. But we had a client where their email got compromised. So what happens is when an email gets compromised, someone goes in, they get your password. I'm sure you guys have seen people or their Facebook account gets hacked. They don't change the password. They just go in, they message your friends. They want to make sure they want to try to get some information and get some money from you. So when an email gets compromised, people don't know. So for example, they're going to go in and they're going to find out, they're going to read your emails. They're going to see who the CFO is. They're going to see who does all the financial stuff. They're going to read it. So what's going to happen is they're going to create rules. So for example, person A is my accountant. They're going to go to person A and say, hey, can you wire $250,000 to this account? I'm going to do this. So any reply coming from that person's email back to the hacker, there's rules set up in the junk mail folder. Not junk mail, but there's routed rules. So it goes right into deleted. So when a person has a cell phone, they're going to see that email's not coming through to this person when they reply. So they literally have full conversations without actually picking up a telephone and saying, hey, we should probably call when you're doing this. We've had 2 clients wire more than $300,000 because of something like this happening. One has caught it in the middle of time where the bank, because even they'll communicate with the person at a bank, and they'd be like, well, I'm familiar with this because we had a different one where they had an accountant. She called the bank. Yep, I got this information from my boss, and all of a sudden it went. All of a sudden the guy looked at his account and he's like, whoa, what happened? I mean, it's a big deal. It happens locally, and it's a nasty thing. But now Microsoft has literally used partners like us that we have to manage it, because instead of people saving some money, we need to go in and fix that issue before it even happens. Again, that's part of our stack that we're doing. Another nasty one we had last year is we tried to do managed services with all of our clients. Managed service is a proactive solution rather than a reactive solution. So we got our name Pro IT because we want to be proactive with our clients. We want to make sure we're managing their hardware. We want to make sure we're managing all the software. You're getting updates or firmware updates, as your computers, your servers, network gear, everything is completely updated so you're not vulnerable to outside sources. Again, rewind 10, 15 years ago, cybersecurity it was a thing, but it wasn't as relevant as today. Back in the day when I first got into it after college, the big thing was don't write your passwords on your monitor. Don't put it on a sticky note, put it on your monitor, because when people log in, they want it simple, easy. Nowadays, you're probably almost safer there than you are half the time for the outside sources coming at you. So another client of ours, they got compromised. They were not a managed service client. So they were a big company. So for them, they would have cost, thousands upon thousands a month to use our services and make sure we fully protect everything in there. They had a solution where a VPN didn't have 2-factor in, so the hackers got in from the outside. They compromised. They use a encoder to get the admin credentials. They got into the servers. We did online backups for them. Best thing we ever did for them, but we did online backups. They went in and they took over everything. So they took over the admin roles. They reset any other kind of admins like backends in for us to go in and do anything, and it was all locked up. So ransomware, I'm sure most of you have heard of it. What it is they're just taking all the files, they're renaming it, and you have to pay for a key to get that information. So a big company like that, a lot of things we sit down with our clients is you want to make sure you have a cybersecurity insurance plan. So you're going to go through your bank or whoever it is, your insurance company, who has that information, insurance company, and they're going to have that information. And in case of an issue like this, you have to go through them. So in that situation, when they call me, they say, hey, all of our computers are locked, and for this one, they literally just printed on every printer. Every printer had a thing saying you were hacked and you got to pay this ransom to try to. Sometimes it works. We've had a client in Williston where they had to pay the ransom because they didn't do online backups. So they literally had no historical data to revert back to. So this company, we had the backups. It was all good for that. But when you have to go through a cybersecurity plan, you have to go through, they have their outsourced IT as well. They jump in and we work together. So with that, it's when we made the call to them, and so the owner of the company asked, he's like, how long am I going to be down? Because again, if you're a small business and anywhere in North Dakota, it's expensive to be down. If you're down for hours, it stinks. If you're down for days, it's crucial. So initially, our first conversations with this cybersecurity company that just deal with this, they deal with it after the fact when someone gets attacked. They said, we'll let you know in 2 weeks to know how long you're going to be down for. So any company, if you guys are in a business, any company, if you're down for 2 weeks, it's crazy. Oh man, look at that. So they were down literally. So we worked with them literally throughout the nights, through the weekends, and they were down for a full week. So we're able to do certain things. We could have backed them up the next day from a backup. But again, when you're going through different things where social security numbers are exposed, when people's birthdays, people's names, people's addresses, all that kind of stuff is exposed and possibly vulnerable to there, you have to go the right avenues to go through that. Again, that's when the insurance kicks in and you have to do work on them from their part. So again, it's crucial for us after going through a couple of years with the clients. Now we've kind of taken the stance in the past year saying it's no longer a la carte. We're going to be managing as much as we can for you. And I would say of our clientele, we have about 60% of our clients that we work with is a managed service client. So a couple stats here. It says there is a $1.1 billion tallied in ransoms paid in 2023. Which is particularly shocking because it nearly doubled from $567 million in ransoms paid out in 2022. So of those people paying the ransoms, I know it had been probably 6 years ago. There was a hospital in Los Angeles where they got ransomware, and they paid the ransom because for them to actually restore from the cloud would have taken longer and more time spent than what the ransom was. So again, they're going through Bitcoin to pay that ransom, and I think it was like 4 million. Again, this was many, many years ago. And even this one that I had with a client here in Minot, I think their ransom was 600,000. So they go to me and they're like, "Do we pay it?" I was like, "Absolutely not. Like, we have your backups and they're tested and they work." So again, that's a big thing. So people don't realize what it has. After that scenario, guess what? They are a full-blown managed service client. They don't want to go through that again, being down for a 2-week period of time, and they have 250 employees across North Dakota and Montana between their 9 locations. So a big deal. You know, we pitch this stuff. It's not the cheapest thing, but once you're down, it's something that's kind of like Minot with the flood. You go through a flood, you want flood insurance? Absolutely, I want flood insurance, because going through that once is nothing you want to go through again. So another stat is there's 1.7 million ransomware attacks every day, which means there are 19 ransomware attacks that are occurring every second. So of those ransomwares, they don't focus on big companies. They focus on, it doesn't matter if you're at your house, they focus on everything. They're not going particularly after the big dogs. They're just trying to get anybody and anyone who they can get some money out of. So some things that we want to do when we're trying to pick our stack for our software is we want to increase efficiency with our team and manage our client resources accordingly. So again, we want a single dashboard where we get all that information in. We have our software, our RMM software sitting on people's servers, computers, networking gear. We get the information back. So again, when a customer comes in, their computer's off, they're like, "Dang it, Dustin, I need your help." We want to get those alerts saying, "Hey, we got some bad sectors on a hard drive. Your memory is going bad. This is failing." So we can stay ahead of it, the game, instead of just the break fix like many, many years ago. We want to be up and ahead of the game to make sure we have all the right stuff in place. And with their tools like the RMM, it does patch management, monitoring, alerting, secure remote access, and like endpoint task automation. So we can roll out, if back in the day, WSUS was a Windows Server Update service. So this is something that servers would have. And if you guys are in the IT, some of the guys in here, it kind of worked, but now these tools are so much better. And whereas, you know, we manage over 2,700 endpoints. So that's computers, servers, network gear, and stuff like that. So with that, we can roll out an update. We can roll out any kind of application to literally a client. So like when we onboarded that client and they had 250 computers, we can onboard that software in a matter of 15 minutes. So instead of trying to do stuff, because again, multiple locations, trying to get someone on site, do things, it's again, we want to work on efficiencies. I want to make sure it's price conscious and work with our clients to make sure that they're up and have the most amount of time. You know, our antivirus nowadays, it's called like an EDR, which is an endpoint detection and response. So what that does is we put that in place. So if a computer is vulnerable, an attack happens on a computer. Let's just say a person goes to a website, they open up a rogue email, it got through the filters and someone clicked on it, they didn't know. What happens is when that computer gets attacked, the software inside there realizes it's getting attacked, and it'll do 2 things. First thing, it'll disable your network card so it doesn't pass on to the other computers in the organization. Secondly, once it starts seeing files are getting taken over, the names are getting renamed, it kind of creates its own little storyline, and AI is kind of built into that as well. We're actually a roll back to where it was before that happened. Again, we get live notifications on that too from our side and our dashboard, which is pretty neat and not neat when something like that happens. You see it and you're like, okay, what happened? How did this get there? Because again, when I answer to the clients, they got to ask me, how did this happen? You're protecting this. What are the steps? What did we do? And again, it's try hard to detect what all that was and how it got down those avenues. Cybersecurity is a tough thing. You know, we have tools in our stack to try to prevent as much as you can, but it's not fully there because these hackers, cybersecurity people are trying to find any avenue to get in, to get that information, to get on your computer. And just, you know, if they hit 1 out of 100, they're making money. You know, there's a lot of automation that happens behind that. Some stuff that, again, the big things that we manage is making sure we have local and cloud backups. You know, we do security awareness training for the clients too. Is I can't sit down with all of our, you know, couple thousand people to tell them what's right and what's wrong every email they get through. So we have tools that are going to go through and tell them, you know, there's a couple, KnowBe4 is one, Proofpoint is one, where they're going to go through and we're going to send out test emails just to make sure, you know, I go into an organization, I'm going to send out this email and guess what? 60% of your people just opened up that email, which, you know, it's eye-opening, but it keeps them aware of what it is and what isn't, what you shouldn't go through for that. You know, there's always changes in the industry. And the big thing for us is, you know, working with our peer-to-peer group. So we want to make sure we stay alert, see what's happening. You know, some vendor might not be good for us now, but in the next year or two, it may be. What happens to with these guys, you create something good, big, all of a sudden they get bought out by a bigger company. And then unfortunately we fight battles or we have to change and transition. And sometimes transitioning for something that we have a whole bunch of these agents out there is easier said than done. So we have a couple clients, or we have some different EDR antivirus, and we have some over here because of fully transitions and stuff like that. So I mean, it's kind of an ongoing battle and trying to make sure we stay ahead of the game as much as making sure our clients are fully aware of kind of what's out there. Yeah, and then I know probably some of you have heard that Las Vegas hack. You guys familiar with that? With the Caesars went down, all that kind of stuff too. And I'm not sure if you're fully aware of what happened there. It was a social media post where a person went in and they found someone who was supporting something. He said, "Hey, my name is Dustin. I lost my keys to my login. Can you send it this email?" So some guy with an admin level support gave a hacker credentials to like the keys to everything out there in Caesars. More or less, that person went in, he shut down. I mean, you can Google it, and he shut down, like you went in and slot machines were turned off. Like Caesars is huge. So I don't think they posted what price it was that they got it going or what the solution was. But again, it was a huge, nasty thing where ransomware is always a big thing, and cybersecurity is a huge, huge concern. So I guess in a nutshell, that's kind of a little bit of everything. If there's any questions for anybody. Chad.
My apologies. When did you decide to go from industry and take the leap and go into entrepreneurship? Like, how did you decide that was the direction to go in? And then the second question being, knowing what you know now, would you still have made the step?
So when I was in the private sector and we worked for a company, and they got to a point where we were able to split off from what they're going. They wanted to go down a different avenue. So there was literally 8 of us on the IT side of this company we worked with, and 3 of us said, okay, let's spearhead this thing head on. I think we can do this, and I think there's an absolute market for it and what we want to do and where we're going. So we were ahead of the time of what we were doing locally for the MSP side. There was no local MSP. Bismarck had some stuff. East side of the state had some stuff as well. But for the industry where we're at, we saw a huge market for it. So that's when me and 2 of my partners out of Williston kind of jumped in head first to take it on, and we were able to take all of our existing clientele with us to start Pro IT in 2013. We started doing managed services about 2011 is when we kind of started going down that. Second question was, would I still do it? Oh, absolutely. So again, I love technology. When I go sit down with a client, and I have high energy. So when I go through and sit with them and tell them, like, this is what it is, here how it works, I don't need you to know all the nasty stuff with it, but I want you to be aware of what you have, what you're paying for, and why you're doing it. Again, IT in a lot of people's budgets is like back of mind. But again, when your network or system goes down, it's very important to them because that's how they make money at the end of the day. So again, I want to go and preach my importance. I usually have QBRs. I have quarterly business reviews with my clients and sit down and say, here's what you got. Here's what's expiring. Here's what we have to upgrade. You have end of life of this hardware. We got to make sure we keep this up to date so it's not vulnerable. And I want to make sure we don't have any vulnerabilities for a lot of what your clients and what you guys have for needs. Yeah, so that's about to the extent of that. He's making you run, Mike.
With the high availability and just proliferation of generative artificial intelligence, either internally at your organization or in your clients, what things have become top of mind from a security perspective that maybe just weren't even 5 years ago?
You know, there's a lot of things. Obviously, we talk about that all the time when we go to our peer-to-peer groups and internally with our guys. Like, what can we use to AI? You know, we see the bad things of it, but how do we stay above in front of it? So we got to stay with it. We can't be like, no, you know, I don't want to be the BlackBerry of the IT group in Minot, right? So when something comes up, be like, no, I've got this. We got to figure it out. All of a sudden, boom, it's right past by. again, this is a relevant topic that we talk about often, where we leverage it a little bit on our like documentation and stuff like that. So when our guys are doing our tickets, we can leverage that for what's out there. As for, I mean, I don't know. It's a hard question to answer, because there's good and bad, and we have to leverage it regardless of what it is. We have to adapt with it. And again, we rely heavily on our software vendors to be like, okay, with this in place, what do we do? What's our next steps? And obviously we look at the future cast of, what's happening, what's out there, how do we respond to it when that situation arises?
Thank you so much for coming, Travis Smith. I like how the pro IT stands for proactive.
Yeah.
How can we as individuals be proactive in sharing the digital literacy that we have with people who may be less so? I work at Geek Squad at Best Buy.
Okay.
And oftentimes we get people in who they have their email hacked, right?
Yep.
It tends to be sometimes older people, but also people who just have less experience with computers. So how can we in our daily lives help our parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles with these complicated topics?
Yeah. So what's complicated to them is not complicated to you or I. With that is you kind of have to, like, when I go through and I pitch something to a client, I want to make sure they're aware of what's going on, but I use a lot of layman terms. So I'm going to talk to a level where, like, a lot of my techs are awesome. They're studs. And when they start talking technology, holy cow, they get their nerd on and it goes. So again, I want to, they come in on the phone calls with my clients as well, but then I break it down to them and say, okay, so we're going to build a car. We're going to build your computer. I'm going to build a car. I'm going to take some Ford parts, some Chevy parts, and some Dodge parts. And this thing is going to look like a beast on a piece of paper. But in actuality, it's a pilot turd. I want to make sure that we break down a term so they can understand how that correlates with what they're doing. And then if you're my parents, I say, just don't touch it. Call me and I will fix it. My mom, every time I go out there, she's like, I've got a list for you. It's like, I know. My wife just shakes her head.
Hi, my name is Tolu. I've been an adjunct faculty at Minot State at the College of Business. I'm an entrepreneur and also investor in the cybersecurity space. And I was quite interested about what you were saying about the costs and the budgets of companies for cybersecurity protection. So what I realized, obviously, a lot of these solutions that help organizations are quite expensive. So I just wanted to speak to how you kind of craft solutions that can be at the right price point for small businesses, particularly.
Right. It's easier said than done. So, I mean, on a scale, small businesses, we range from, some people might pay us a couple $100 a month to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on their scalability. Again, when we were a la carte, we can pick and choose what they wanted, obviously on cost. But once we go and emphasize the importance of it and give them life examples of what we've interpreted, and even our client or our peer-to-peer groups as well, what they've encountered out in the wild as well. I mean, it's super important, but if no one talks about it, again, I live in this world, so we see this stuff every day. Whereas our customer, they're going to have no idea what it is. They may not read it because our feeds on whatever it is, I see that stuff. And on the insurance side, let's just say they're an insurance agency. I don't know everything in and out about insurance agencies, and they're going to give me the whole beat down on that. So again, just trying to work with them, and we're flexible again, but we really push the importance of how it protects them to prevent them from this happening. Because a lot of people, if you're down for a day or two, for a small business, it's crucial. COVID was a good tester that we've had a client in the area. They had to lay off half of their staff. And they were down to a skeleton crew, but they still had us in place managing things because they know the importance, again, because I've been out there, 4 times a year to express and do what I'm doing. As long as I'm doing my job and informing them of what's out there, what's happening, we do like a roadmap plan. So let's just say their hardware is failing and we have to do a new server. Well, all of a sudden things change because of VMware. It got bought out by Broadcom. So then we have to change to a different hypervisor. There's just different things that they have to know and be aware of. So when that happens, they're kind of like, oh, Dustin's my IT guy. He's got it squared away. I feel comfortable, whatever he comes, we're their trusted advisor. We got to earn their trust first. And then once we kind of go in and then just we go to conventions and conferences and come back and say, hey, I got this golden nugget from this, where I'm going to go through and say, I think we need to go down this, this, and this. I know it can't happen all at once, but this is something we just have to get on our roadmap to get swapped out and changed out.
I think we have one more, and this will be the last one, but I'll make an exception for you. Two more.
Hey, my name is Saif, and I'm a computer science major. And my question is regarding the rise of artificial intelligence and especially deep fakes. How can us students keep ourselves safe from getting hacked, or, for example, the rise of voice generation? Anyone can social engineer and call our banks and get information that we need. How can we protect ourselves from that?
Great question. If I'd answered that, I'd be a millionaire. I think the biggest thing is just being smart. So again, you're going to get emails. My daughter even emailed me. She goes, I got this email saying my QuickBooks is not connected to my bank account anymore. What do I do? I said, well, don't click on the link. Be a little bit smarter. There's times when a phone call comes through, you're going to get a phone call from a person and sometimes it's dead on the other end. There's nothing, you don't know. Or let's just say you get a phone call saying, hey, you've been compromised. Here's this information. Call this back. I had a friend that got a call from the Ward County Sheriff's Office and they missed court and there's a warrant out for your arrest. So literally, and it's literally a local number. It's a 701-857, whatever it is number. So call this number back. So they give you a different number to call back, which goes to these hackers, and they tried, and they're like, yeah, this is Jesse from the Ward County. Literally, it's a fake thing. It's a whole setup. So then you hung up. It's no different than, hey, your PayPal's been compromised, put in for your information, call this number. Well, it's a bogus number. I can make logos and I can make the email look legit. Again, AI, it's going to be tougher. When you go through the audio or the voice side of things, it's just a matter of trying to be smart and being like, okay, is this a scam? I've gotten emails where I'm like, oh, this is easy a scam. All of a sudden, my mom will send me something like, is this legit? And I'm like, it looks really good. So it's just a matter of try to take, make that extra phone call somebody. I always tell my techs too, is like, if you're supporting, I have a client that they want to fix an issue, pick up the phone and call them. In the IT world, it's easier just to jump on through chat, jump in and do it. Again, customers like that voice to go and call and talk to them. So again, you might get a phone call to do this, go on the internet, find the phone number of your bank, whatever it is, and call and say, is a legit thing. My wife, there was a time she got a call from saying, my credit card was hacked. You got this, do you want us to stop payment, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I don't trust this. I'm going to call the bank. Call the bank. The bank's like, yes, that's our third party that called us. It's a legit thing. So knowing that, instead of just going off your whim saying, yeah, let's do it. Take my $30.
Hi, I'm Connie Ahart with the Entrepreneurship Academy. And I just wanted to ask you, back when you said the three of you started your own company, maybe you could speak for a second on how did you all manage the business aspect, like knowing how much to price your services, how you invoiced, how you billed, how you didn't lose money on clients, how you got the word out that you all existed, the kinds of things that every company has to know.
Oh, great question. So when we first started, again, we were part of an initial company that they just wanted to quit doing IT because of some outside resources. So we were able to take all of our existing clientele. We already had contracts in place. So we knew what kind of money was coming in to what we were paying ourselves and our guys as well. So with that, we worked out of our houses. We worked at client sites. We didn't have to have that building on the main street, because you're paying for your overhead. So we were able, within the IT world, we can do stuff remotely. So we have great clients where they have an open office and desk. So we would literally have some of our techs sit in that desk all day long, whether they're working with that company or not, where we had other companies, again, we can do everything remotely, mostly remotely as well. And luckily, that's kind of how we started. We have offices now in Minot, Williston, physical buildings. Knowing for the prices and getting things out, again, we relied heavily on our peer-to-peer group and talking with our clients. It's a matter of, how do I get in front of the right people? How do I advertise? What's the best way of advertising? I want to get in front of decision makers. I want to get in front of the CFOs. I want to get in front of the CEOs, the people that make the decisions, and to see if they can fit it within budget. So then once you go through, when we first started, we were like $30 per agent, per computer, per month. So, you know, we'd get, let's just say they had 5 computers we're managing at $150 a month, and it was an unlimited IT Monday through Friday. We lost our tushes on some months. Again, we want to get it to a place when we onboard a client, we know we're going to lose money right away. Any kind of business, you know, and once we get them all squared away up in the right infrastructure, we know we're going to make money down the road with them. You know, what's our ROI? Those are important things for us to make sure that we aren't losing month to month and trying to get our information out there as a client, you know, because once I get in front of somebody and I can explain a lot of the stuff, because a lot of people just don't know. They have their local IT guy. He does this thing that, you know, he doesn't go to conferences. He's not learning. He takes days off. You know, what we go through is we work with clients that have their IT as well. So we work side by side. You know, we have a client we just got in Bismarck recently where they have a local IT guy. Our software, they can go in the ticketing system. He can see everything as we can see everything. So it's kind of nice we worked hand in hand with them. But again, trying to get things started as a business, it's not easy. I can tell you we've had our roller coasters up and downs. But again, we want to try to get into a spot where we're making money, they're happy, and trying to be suffice with that kind of stuff. Not an easy process though, but good question.
Aaron Seifert.
Hi, everyone. My name is Darren Seifert. I am the chair of the, I guess, Math and Computer Science Department. Traditionally, it's become the Math, Data, and Technology Department recently, and that has grown to incorporate a lot of things other than just math and computer science. Now, we've had a data science degree that was recently started that Dr. Fenner mentioned a bit ago. It includes now business information technology. But the 2 degrees that I've been asked to talk about are our computer science degree and our cyber operations degree that was created about 3 years ago. So our computer science degree is pretty traditional. Most of you know what computer science is at this point. We have different specializations within that. There's a track where it focuses on classes that'll prepare you for graduate school. There's a track for system administration, a track for software development. We've traditionally had one in what was called database design and administration. That's sort of evolving now to be kind of what we're focusing on here. That's sort of evolving into not just databases, but artificial intelligence, machine learning. It's sort of been built out into that sort of track now. And then we also have a security track in there. The security track over time evolved into what we now call our cyber operations degree, which I think I mentioned we've had about 4 years now. As Dr. Fenner mentioned, we have the Business Information Technology degree, also has a cyber designation from the National Center of Academic Excellences. There are 3 different designations that they support right now. One of them is cyber defense, which is that one. There is a research one. NDSU has for several years been designated as a research institute in cybersecurity. UND just was designated as a research institute, so those are both that. Our program is not designated as of yet, but it is built around the 3rd category, which is called cyber operations, and that's the name kind of built into the name of the program there. That area of cybersecurity is a little more technical, not so focused on research, but it's sort of built around, like the goals are producing students who could potentially work for the Department of Defense or the National Security Agency. So there are, you know, it starts off kind of in classes that are similar to computer science. So you would learn basic programming, but then you also learn low-level programming. You learn how to reverse engineer software. You learn malware analysis. You learn cryptography. There's classes in network defense, right? Wireless network technology. So all those sort of things. We're adding new classes to that next year. There will be an additional class in software security, industrial Internet of Things. We're creating a class in that as well. So it's evolving all the time. But one thing, just to kind of bring that program back to this topic a little bit, I was in San Antonio last week, and one of the presentations that we had was from kind of the coordinator of those Center of Excellence programs. And they are in the process of evaluating those different areas all the time. And they've built these 3 areas, and it's kind of existed that in that way for, I don't know, Chad would know better than I do, but say 10 years now, roughly, that they've been evolving that. They're now looking at creating a 4th area. So this is a brand new thing that they're just kind of setting up now and starting to talk to universities about creating right now, but it's specifically in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. So not only is this a huge topic on its own, but it's grown to the point where they now need schools to start creating programs specifically to deal with how those 2 things work together. So it's analyzing network traffic using artificial intelligence, looking at how scams are created using artificial intelligence, all those kind of things. So that will be coming down the pipeline shortly. They're going to have grant solicitations for universities to start creating pilot programs for what that would look like, and to start looking at what the different knowledge units that should consist of. I don't know if that will make its way into North Dakota, and it may not start with Minot State if it does, but just that's how the field is evolving currently. That's where they see kind of the need to be. So that's government agencies will be looking for employees specifically with that kind of knowledge in the near future. With that, if you have any more questions about that kind of stuff, if you want to talk about computer science or cybersecurity or artificial intelligence, data science, I'll be around over lunch. You can visit with me then. Dr. Fenner is going to talk a little bit more about the data science program after lunch, I think, as well. But the main reason I'm here is to introduce Arnie Streeb. Arnie is a co-founder of BisBlox and a 2021 MSU Golden Award recipient. Arnie's mother was a Nagasaki bomb survivor. And I know she heavily influenced how he approaches his life today. Arnie was an Army Ranger for 20 years. And his bio says that he spent much of that time jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, which I thought was clever. Let's see, he is an MSU alumni himself. But also he mentioned to me that his wife and his daughter are all MSU alumni, as are Dr. Fenner and I too. So I think that's kind of the point of this session, is just to really bring out some of the things that our MSU alumni are working on at this point. So thank you. With that, Arnie, please come up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? First, I want to say some thank yous to Clint Severson and Connie Earhart for all the great work that you've done with the Entrepreneur Center. And for those students that are still here, if you get the chance to meet with them and talk with those 2, it'd be a great thing to do. My mom was very influential in my development, and so was my dad. Served in the Army for about 20 years, and another gentleman by the name of Colonel Hugh Shelton, who then became a 1-star and then became a 4-star, and I think probably Admiral Hagerott might even know him. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. My degree is in education. My master's degree is in education. I've been a firm believer in education throughout my entire life. You know, I'm coming from a mother that was Japanese. Education is like job number 1, right? One of the things I want to talk about a little bit is a little bit off the subject of AI and cyber is, okay, for those that are students, how do you develop yourself as a leader? Okay, and I know that I think there are some leadership courses that are being taught on campus. I know when I went to school here, graduated in '86, and yeah, I was a recipient of the Alumni Award. That just means I'm old. Okay, that means I'm really old, because I was like thinking, geez, it was like 40 years ago I was on this campus, and I'm thinking, I know the students, well, my kids are not 40 years old yet, but I'm just thinking that's a long, long time ago. Jacob Jensen, right? Yes. Okay, I'm a former trackster. You know, you run like probably 20 seconds faster than I did in the 1500. It's good to see you in person, another trackster over there, right? I have a warm heart for track folks. What I want to do is talk about the 40 years of experience that I have. I actually went to Minot State as a second lieutenant in the Army. They had this green to gold program. I also want to thank Rick Hedberg back there in development. I know that you're a part of this. Chad Fenner, thank you all so very much. And then Dr. Shirley in the back there, thank you as well for putting this together. What I've learned over 40 years is I have this thing called LX4. My first book was Zero to Something. And really what that is when you start at 0, do something. right? Lead, follow, or get out of the way, but do something. And that's that book. The next book I'm writing right now is LX4. And since we are talking about AI, you know, my grammar ain't that good, right? What do you think I'll be using as I write that second book? And it's called, what AI is called what? Starts with G, Grammarly, right? Grammarly, right? So, and my grammar is not really that bad, but it can be on occasion. Based on 40 years of learning experiences, what I think is very, very critical as a student or as a practitioner, and Shawn Riley and I, and you'll get to hear Shawn later, we're the co-founders of BisBlox, and what we are is we're a venture studio. And so what's a venture studio? Forbes magazine said in 2020 that companies that use a venture studio are 93% more likely to succeed. If they don't use a venture studio, they're 87% more likely to fail. Okay, Forbes is well known. Mr. Severson back there was it the Entrepreneur of the Year or Businessman of the Year? Entrepreneur of the Year. For all the students that are in this room, you need to talk to that man right there. Been there, done it, has the t-shirt. Also has done a major contribution to this university. And when I think about my LX4 stands for Leadership Philosophy, Leadership Toolkit, Leadership Operating Model, and Leadership Legacy. His legacy is Minot State graduate, very, very, very successful as a person and also as a business person. So for the students that are here, shake his hand and ask him some very basic questions. And if you stumble with that, that's okay, because he'll still help you out. Right, Jacob? Yep. Right. Good question earlier. So leadership philosophy, what are your values? What are your beliefs? Because you're going to come into companies that your values and your beliefs are not aligned. So when you're out there looking for that job, what are your values and your beliefs? Now, as a leader, what do you value? Okay, and I'm going to walk you through one of my legacies is in the last 4 jobs that I've had, they've hired the person that I've developed to take my position. So I was the CFO of the Department of Health and Human Services for 4 years. I had 10 direct reports, 4 assistant CFOs. I had HR reporting to me, finance, obviously, legal, logistics, and communications. So when I was working with those folks, what I focus on as a leader, one of my values is on that leadership legacy is to develop those folks that I'm working with so they can replace me. So 2 of the candidates that I worked with, one of them actually did replace me. I'm one of those folks that has had many jobs, not because I can't keep a job, okay, but I was a bank president before I was at DHHS, and the person I work with, legacy once again, the person I developed, that person took my position. Same thing for the other 2 jobs. Values and beliefs. I'll show you. I'm gonna walk you through very quickly because we're getting close on time. I'm gonna walk you through. Okay, these are my values. These are my beliefs. I'll walk you through a toolkit. This is what I call my leadership toolkit. I think I have like 25 of them up there. I have a toolkit that's actually 55 tools that I use that I've learned over the last 40 years. I have a toolkit for marketing. I have a toolkit for sales. And being an old Army Ranger, you're pretty structured, right? You're very structured, very disciplined. So I'm very structured, very disciplined. Then we also have an operating model. That's the how. The toolkit are the tools. And so as you go through school, what tools can you gather as you get ready to go into the workplace? And then legacy, that's all about your contributions. I'm a wakeboarder, or try to be a wakeboarder. What are you leaving behind in your wake? Right? With Mr. Severson here, major impact on the university in so many different ways. Taking time out of his busy schedule to be here today to be with you. That's legacy. Okay. Now, so this is what I used when I was at with my direct reports at DHHS. They could probably recite these to you word for word for word for word. My mom, 5 feet tall, Nagasaki bomb survivor, she'd always say, Arnold-san, do the right things the right way at the right time. My kids, one of my kids is a health professional here in Minot, would do the right things the right way, right time. I was hoping she would show up because I wanted her to nod her head up and down saying, yeah, that's my dad. Be a servant leader. Now, there's transformational leaders, there's servant leaders, there's dictatorial leaders, there's authoritative leaders, there's laissez-faire. Kind of check it out. Yeah, catch a wave. Okay. Be a servant leader. So it was my job to go back and do the things that I could within reason to help those folks be successful. And what I learned when I worked with General Shelton, it was never about General Shelton. It was always about his soldiers. He was what they call the soldier's soldier. Recognize good work when appropriate. I always assume positive intent. You know, my team at DHHS and others, it's like always assume positive. When you get that email, what tone do you read it in? When you have that conversation with somebody, they might have had a bad day, arms are crossed, they're tired. Assume positive intent. That I live by that, and I was taught that by once again by my mother. Listen before I act, get the facts and keep my heart and gut in check. There are so many things that are happening in the world today that evoke an emotion, right? Take a breath. My wife has 2 yoga studios in Bismarck. She's like the yin and the yang. She's like, Arnold, son, take a breath. Take a breath, right? So think about it and get all the facts. Be honest, fair, and just, and lead by example. You know, military thing, lie, cheat, don't steal on top of anyone does. Take a breath and rest. Be myself at all times and leave a positive legacy. Have fun and make it fun for others. I have these 2 little stickers on my monitors. In one is, it's called the weight model. Why am I talking? Am I just taking airtime? Am I adding any value? And I would say as a student, the second part is ask more questions. Ask more questions. When my dad was in Vietnam, I was in the 3rd grade. My 3rd grade teacher's name was Mrs. Ward. She was a great teacher. But I remember one day I was like stuck in the corner like I was normally in the corner almost, not every day, but at least once or twice a week. One day I get home, I'm out there in the front yard playing in the yard, playing football. And my mom, I knew I was in trouble when she started talking to me in Japanese. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Okay, yeah, kind of. All right, so she starts talking in Japanese. I don't sound kokowa de kudasai, which means come on over here. It's like, oh gosh, I'm in trouble now. She says, well, guess who called me today? Like, I don't know. Who might have called you today? Mom? So she said, well, Mrs. Ward called me today, Arnold. And I'm going like, you know, I'm starting to get nervous now. It's like, and she said, Arnold, you learn more by listening than talking. Now, I've failed at that for 30 years after that, but I think I've kind of labeled, or I've kind of knocked it out here in the last 10 years. And I think Shawn would say that I'm a pretty good listener. Ask more questions. When appropriate, stop talking and listen, because you'll learn more. Never stop learning, be curious, and have a growth mindset. A lot of great information. You know, Dr. Hagerott, Admiral Hagerott, world class. Shawn Riley, world class. Dustin, world class. Great information. How old do you think I am? I'm just curious to see how. Be nice, Jacob. How old do you think I am? Go low, go low, go low. Oh my gosh, I'm 64, okay? So I'm an old trackster. My body feels like it's 64, but my mind doesn't, okay? Be curious. Be curious. Never, I'll say it again, never stop learning. When I coach executives, I tell them, if you want to stay significant, then you have to be curious. If you want to stay significant, you need to have a growth mindset, right? Never stop. So when you're done with school and you move on, in order to stay significant and relevant, when we talk about cybersecurity and we talk about AI, that is critical, right? So these are my values and beliefs. And like I said, if I had any of my team members from the past 20 years, they'd go back and say, yep, Arnie's all about the right thing, right way, right time. Our decisions at BisBlox, when we help startups or companies that are running, we We work with Mayo, we work with Google, we work with Palo Alto Networks, we work with Innova, and then we work with a lot of smaller startups. So we work with start, run, grow, transform companies. Everything that we do, it's like when Dustin was asked that question, okay, how do you go back and what's your pricing strategy? When Shawn and I and others on our team, we go back to, we want to do the right thing, the right way at the right time. We want to be fair, just, and honest. Those are things that as a leader, as a student, as you move forward, you'll work on. Okay, so tools. I'm not going to bore you with the long list of tools. Number one, come up with your own model. It's like when Dr. Hagerott was talking about, go back and punt. What he's saying. If you want to punt LX4, I'm fine with that. The thing about what is your leadership model, though, in regards to what's your philosophy on leadership? What tools are you beginning to collect now? How are you going to operate as a business person? And then what's your legacy? These items up here, these are leadership specific. The one thing that we do work with is a company called Korn Ferry, and the focus is to take a look at that's research space. What results do you produce as a leader? How do you work with people? What do you think? And then self-awareness, and then the technical skills, org knowledge, community involvement. We spend a lot of time working with entrepreneurs or with some of the more established companies on their success profiles with their leadership. And that's all science-based, it's all research-based. And Korn Ferry is like one of the top 3 individual development companies in the world. Yeah. So these are some of our tools. Q12, you'll hear of Q12 in the future. Conflict management. People either avoid, accommodate, collaborate, compete, compromise, and conflict. Okay. So when I look at this, like I said, I have my toolkit, there's like 55 of them. 40 years of experience, means I'm old, but there's a lot of these here. So this is second list, it's like 25 total. We do a lot of SWOT analysis, mind mapping. Every meeting that we have at BisBlox, we have a NATO. What's the nature of the meeting, the agenda, time, and outcomes? And we work with our clients, we have a NATO. I get accused of, it was up here somewhere, standing operating procedures, right, Darla? SOP. Arnie is about standing operating procedures. Do not get in the way of his standard operating procedures, right? That's kind of, I see Clint smiling a little bit, so maybe we're on the same, Obi-Wan Kenobi, wavelength there, where structure, right? So with cost benefit analysis and so forth and so forth and so forth. So if you're growing as a leader, what tools are you going to use to lead your organization? There's 25 on those 2 sheets here. I have 55 just for leadership, and I have another group for marketing, another group for sales, another group for research and development. Operating model. There's the SOPs, okay. If you think it, ink it. I see Clint smiling again. Okay, I think that's a good sign, right, Clint? Are we speaking the same language here? Okay. Think it, ink it. Documentation. All 10 of my direct employees on number 4, they were required to write their leadership philosophy. They were required to take a look at developing their own toolkit. They were required to go back and say, how are you going to operate with your teams? And then they require, what legacy do you want to leave when you're done in your leadership position? And then I wanted them to share their toolkit and share those 4 components: philosophy, toolkit, op model, and legacy. And then share what you want your leadership legacy to be. Develop a culture of growth and transparency. $6 billion budget, $3 billion a year. We were transparent. One, we're a state agency, right? It's about sharing information. The other thing is, if you want people to grow in your organization, you have to give them the opportunities to grow, right? So that's the operating model, the how. And this was the legacy, okay? I went through something in, I think it was like 20 minutes, that normally takes either an hour, a day, or a couple of weeks, okay? So what I'm asking you to think about is, what is your philosophy? What tools are you going to begin to gather as a student? And how do you want to operate when you go to your first organization? And then finally, what's your legacy? What's your legacy going to be as a student in Minot State? You know, my legacy was I was a second lieutenant. I even worked part-time, ran cross country and track. And I was just focused on getting my degree because that's what the Army required of me to maintain my commission. So then I left, gone for 20 years. One of the most impactful people I had at Minot State was a gentleman by the name of Wiley Wilson, Coach Wilson. A lot of these leadership lessons I learned from my mom, dad. I would ask as young students, as you go forward in your careers, listen and always ask more questions. Have that growth mindset and never stop learning. Because the world is changing faster than, not that you can't keep up with it, but if you're not looking at listening or have that growth mindset, and number one, be curious. You know, we were talking to the waitress last night at the restaurant who's like, I think in her early 30s, and her dream is to be an aviator. She says, well, you know, my family says I should go and do something. We sat there and told her, dream big, think big. Do not let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Because you can. Because you can. All right. That's my 2-week course in 20 minutes. Sure, sure.
So Travis Smith again, sorry. I really like number 11 and number 12 on your leadership philosophy because it was about asking questions and staying curious. And I'm curious how we, not just as students, but going forward throughout our careers, can prime our curiosity to ask really high quality questions. Questions push dialogue forward, and it's as much half of the conversation as it is the answer. And I guess that's my question: is how can we ask great questions?
I think one of the key things about asking great questions is doing a little research if possible. You know, it's kind of like one of those things where I did a little research on Mr. Severson sitting in the row here. And I'd heard about him before because he's well known at the university. I think it's going back and doing some research so you have some background information, right? It's like in our company, we use the NASA 6-step problem solving process. And you've seen that show, Apollo 13. It's like when they have Houston, we have a problem. They walk through, identify and select the problem, gather all the information, generate solutions, test solutions, implement solutions. I think when you have a situation that, I'm not saying necessarily it's a problem, but go back and put it in question format and then go back and gather all the information, because I think you'll have a better chance of asking a better question. So it's like do some research and homework before you go back and ask the question. Now, if it happens there, just be afraid not to make any mistakes. Don't worry about it. If you ask it's what's that old saying? There's no such thing as a stupid question. Just a stupid question that's pretty close to being stupid. You know, just ask the question. You know, don't be afraid. Be curious. Don't let folks put you down. It's like, you know, if someone gives you an eye roll or, you know, geez, that wasn't really a smart question. It's like, just go for it. You know, be bulletproof, as I would say. Don't worry about, I mean, are you going to remember that 5 years from now that you asked a stupid question or something that someone thought was a stupid question? Nah, don't worry about it. Oh, there you go. Oh, good to see you. Good to see you again in person.
Yeah, good to see you. No, this was excellent. I love the you know, everything in terms of, you know, the various areas and the structure and all that. I think just one of the things that struck me as I was looking at this concept of a success profile is really what, as students or whoever it is, what stories we tell ourselves and how we can basically make, you know, whatever story that we want to tell, we can work towards it, and as whatever what our profile needs to be, a story that we're telling. Because you said, look, even what kind of student do you want to be? What kind of first employee do you want to be? But you're going to tell yourself that story and work towards it. You know, is one thing that
if I use that success profile as a student, right? I think it's like, okay, as a student, what kind of results do you want to produce? What's your GPA going to be? Okay, GPAs are pretty critical in your first job or two, but after that, it's more about the experience you have. I think that'd be a first statement, right, Clint? Okay. The second piece would be okay, how do you think? how do you think as a person? Because I'm just going to walk through the success profile, leadership, right? It's what results you're going to produce. How do you think as a person? Are you a critical thinker? Because you hear a lot of terms about critical thinking, right? Are you a problem solver? Do you shy away from difficult situations? And the other thing is, a part of that Corn Fairy, that's not Shawn and I, that's Corn Fairy, people, right? It's like my daughter, okay, very bright. She's a physician. She says, Dad, we talk every day. Courtney, no, we don't. Dad, we talk every day. Courtney, no, we don't. It's understanding people is also critical in regards to, it's like this month, not next month, Tim Francis, who, Tim Francis, Hall of Famer, truck guy, okay. But anyway, best friend for 40 some plus years, right? People are critical to how businesses run, how things are done, right? Be a good person. Be yourself. Do not try to be somebody else. Just be yourself, right? So you have people, you have thought, you have results. And then the other thing is be very self-aware. Okay, like with Shawn and I in our business, right? We have 300 people that are subcontractors because I know a little bit about marketing. I know a little bit about sales. I ran the largest manufacturing plant of its kind, not knowing anything about manufacturing. I don't know why the company put me there, but they said, hey, Arnie, you're really good with people. 8 languages spoken there. We just fired the person that ran the plant because the employees were so upset they put glass and they put nails in the product. We had a $10 million recall. Oh, and I'm supposed to go and solve this? Right? So we did, but I think it just goes back to when you think about self-awareness. I knew I didn't know. I was consciously incompetent to run that plant. Okay, I knew that. So I had to surround myself with people that knew what they're doing. And the way I was able to do that is I listened and I asked a lot of questions. I was like that 2-year-old or 3-year-old. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? When are we going to get there? So it goes back to when we think of that success profile, it's how you work with people is critical. Then it's your self-awareness. How do you think? And then the results that you produce. I would look at that as a student. Now, as a student on the technical skill side, it's about, are you good at being a student? Are you good at humanities or math or science? Or are you especially good at the career choice that you're making? And then there's other pieces as far as organizational knowledge and community. I'm a firm believer in getting involved with the community. 2 communities, local and the national and professional. So I'm involved, all the folks at BisBlox, we're involved locally. Like I'm on the executive board for the YMCA. I'm on the North Dakota National Guard Foundation. I'm on the North Dakota Military Museum Foundation, Red, White, and Blue. I'm, Ronald McDonald House. And then I'm on these national organizations as well. Network, and don't network so it's just one way. It's what we call at BisBlox positive networking. We have people that we spend a lot of time with that are not clients, they're prospects. But right now with Shawn and I and the rest of the BisBlox team, we have very little social media marketing. Everything that we've done, and we've only been a company, it'll be 1 year tomorrow. Okay. Everything that we've done so far has been done by personal reputation or by people recommending us to take a look at their business. It hasn't, we haven't had one outbound call. It's all been word of mouth and people reaching out to us. Yeah, okay.
One more question.
Hello, my name is Kaif Khan. I'm a student here. One of the most important attributes of being a leader is to be inspiring to your peers and your employees. So my question is, how can I build that quality of being inspiring to others as a leader?
I'm looking at Clint now for an answer there. So I think probably the most important thing is just knowing yourself. I think it's being yourself and not really trying to be anybody else. It's kind of like with myself here, right? Normally, I would be very, militaristic. Then be like, domo arigato, Mr. Roboto, domo. Right? I mean, that's kind of my natural tendency. I mean, my team knows it's like I'm not rigid, but I think over the last probably 20 years, I've become more comfortable in my own skin. I realize that I'm going to learn by making mistakes. It's like, what does fail stand for? F period, F period, A period, I period, L period. First attempt in learning, right? If you don't make mistakes, you're not going to learn. The other thing is if you make mistakes and then you keep making the same mistake over, that's different than making a mistake and then learning from it. So I think when I look back for myself, there were just different parts during my career where I felt more comfortable in my own skin. It's like, you know, and I live on assume positive intent. I live on do the right things the right way at the right time. I live on I will not tolerate anyone who lies, cheats, or steals. I live on the growth mindset. I live on curiosity. I live on I realized that in the beginning of my career, I thought it was about me. It became very, very clear to me it wasn't about me. It's like when I went into a plant where the employees, 2,000 employees, we made 1.4 to 2 million egg rolls a day. And I remember the sanitation manager coming to me and saying, Mr. Arney, you don't know anything about manufacturing. You don't know anything about what we do. And I'm going like, holy moly, what did I get myself into? Why'd that CEO just convince me to take this job that there's just no way I am trained or ready to do this job? But it was the fact that I felt good about who I was as a person. I knew that it wasn't about me. It was about how do I take this group of 2,000 employees in 2 different plants and do what I needed to do. If you want to call it servant leadership, I don't really want to say it was servant leadership. It's like I wanted to make sure I did the right thing, the right way, at the right time. 2,000 employees. There were like about 50 that participated in the 401k program. Right thing, wrong thing, wrong way, wrong time. So we had employee education sessions on, you know what? If someone would give you $1 or $3 for giving, you know, putting in $1, would you take it? Oh yeah. So we had education sessions. We put up TVs in all of the break rooms because the employees were never told or given the information in regards to how well we were doing or how well we weren't doing. So I think it goes back to, it's like, what does your heart tell you? What does your gut tell you? What does your mind tell you? And it's like that old mind, body, spirit. It's become comfortable with yourself in your own skin. And when you're making decisions, it's like my mom would say, you know, right thing, right way, right time, the R's. It's like, okay, mom, I heard it. It'd be like, okay, you know, Arnold, if my face turns red after you told me what you did, probably not the right thing to do. And you have to be able to live with yourself and live with decisions that you make while you're in those leadership positions. And if you can go to sleep at night knowing that you did the right thing the right way at the right time, you were honest, you were fair, you were just, you were consistent, right? So for me, it goes back to what's your philosophy? I think the other key thing as young students is when you get ready to graduate, you want to make sure that the organization that you go to aligns with your values, aligns with your beliefs. Because if you go there and it doesn't, you're not going to be there for very long. It's just not going to feel right. It's not going to feel comfortable. You want to go where you feel like you're respected and you're treated well as a person and also as an employee. So when you're out there looking for that first job, be very, very careful. And that's when I go back to, it's like when we interview people in situations, we'll go back and we'll ask a ton of questions. From where I sit as a former bank president, CEO, CFO, CEO, yada, 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 I find that during the interview process, it's just as important for the person that we're interviewing to ask questions, critical thinking, curiosity. If someone says, no, you know, Arnie, you covered everything. It's like, really, have I covered everything? You haven't asked any questions about culture. You haven't asked any questions about how you develop in the organization. You haven't asked any questions on how we grow people. Those would be things that I'd be taking a look at. And like I said, I could talk about this forever. I'm now 10 minutes over my time. And this is kind of the real me. You know, I'm like, okay, you can go with the flow. I'm a big surfer. My wife likes to live by the lake. I'd rather live by the ocean and be like catch a wave. After all my Army years, we have a place on the lake. You know, happy wife, happy life. Okay. All right. Any other? We good, Mike? Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Arnie, and for all the speakers. So now we're going to do lunch. We have a box lunch. And I think the easiest way might be to do this is to have the front to the back go out, circle around, go through the line. There's a box lunch, there's chips, and there's water or coffee. Come back. Try to do that as efficiently as possible. We will have our lunch and learn session start in about 15 minutes. On the stage, you'll eat through the lunch and learn session. So if we could have you guys funnel through the line as quickly as possible, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, thank everyone for coming. We'll get started here. Looks like everyone's ready. Feel free to continue to eat. My name is Randy Conway. I'm honored to be the director of the Severson Entrepreneur Academy here at Minot State. I get asked a lot of times, what is the Severson Entrepreneur Academy? So for today, I thought maybe I'd give just a really quick overview, and then I'll turn over the discussion to Clint and Connie here for the majority of this. But just to kind of get started, through a variety of programs SEA provides, here's really what we do. Scholarships, both for graduating high school seniors and returning students. Internships for continued learning outside the classroom. We do a lot of community outreach, and that is designed for two purposes. One, to bring the community to Minot State, and to put our students in the community and develop that lasting connection. In addition to that, we have club opportunities, and we are committed to the continued development of the curriculum. So there's ongoing changes to this curriculum that we can develop and designed specifically for the development of our students into future business leaders and business owners. So that's really who we are and what we do in a nutshell. All of this made possible by Connie Hagerott and Clint Severson. SEA was created thanks to a milestone gift to Minot State. And Mr. Severson was the chairman of the board and chief executive officer and president of Abaxis, a medical device company based in Northern California. He's a 1973 alumni of Minot State. And as referenced earlier today, taking away a little bit of my excitement here, but a 2007 Forbes Entrepreneur of the Year. So impressive history. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all you do for Minot State. Really appreciate the interaction that you have with us and me on a regular basis. And today's sessions are focused on emerging technology and the role entrepreneurs play in incorporating this new technology to the customer. From an entrepreneur perspective, even though Dr. Hagerott scared us all, and then Dustin kind of solved our problems for us here later on, and then we learned how to manage. Realistically, what we're here for and what this whole thing is about is how do we create opportunities, and how do students take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us, whether that is, in general daily life, or more specifically taking advantage of this technology and developing a future. So just to get the discussion going, and then we can take it whichever direction you'd like. But I just have one starting question to get us going here. In our discussion earlier this week, you shared an interesting perspective about technology. I think everyone is afraid of job loss and the scary things that are coming out there relating to emerging technology. But your perspective was different, and I'd really like you to share that with the group, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. So technology reduces friction in the economy. It makes people more productive. And if you're more productive, you create more stuff, and that increases your standard of living. And that's what entrepreneurs do. They solve problems. Okay, they acquire the technology, or they develop the technology, and they introduce it, which improves productivity, which reduces friction in the economy and increases everybody's standard of living. That's the bottom line. So we need more entrepreneurs. And the more entrepreneurs we have, the healthier our economy is going to be, and the better life people will have. That's the bottom line. Yeah.
Sure. Do you have any input on that specifically? If not, that's okay. I'll continue on that same topic. And one of the things that you had mentioned in our discussion, you talked about the high value of expertise,
right?
And that all of the technology and all of the technical pieces are all of the high tech. That the reality in your perspective was that entrepreneurs are actually going to bring these things to market and make them profitable and turn them into value added. Can you expand on that a little more?
Yeah. So, okay. So I ran life science companies for 40 years, huh? And I never had a life science class in my life. Never, never. So I'm a manager, huh? I'm somebody that facilitates things to happen, huh? To achieve goals. So I worked with a bunch of technical guys, most of them PhDs, huh? And when you're not a technical person, the biggest risk you have is being bamboozled, right? Huh? Somebody is giving you a line that is not true, huh? Or can't be done. And so I used to explain to my technical staff, if you can't dumb it down so I can understand it, we're not going to do it, huh? We're not going to do it, huh? And so, yeah, so being a manager, being the leader, the guy that can help solve the problems and clear away the obstacles, okay, that facilitates the technology to be developed. And there was a question here earlier about, how do you inspire employees? And employees normally are working for a company to accomplish two things. One, grow their career and make more money. That's what they want to do. They want to grow their career and they want to make more money. So I used to tell people, I will take responsibility to help you grow your career and help you make more money, okay, if you help me make this company work. And that's how you get everybody on the same page, because everybody's pulling in the same direction. And that's the key to getting technology introduced to the marketplace. Everybody working together with the same goal, the same objective. And it's magic, huh? It's magic. If you can figure out how to get that, everybody pulling in the same direction, it's unbelievable how well it works. Yeah.
Oh, I'll add a bit to that if I can, if I may. I was talking with Arnie at lunch, and here at Minot State is the place that you can gather all the tools you need. And to your question about leadership, you all may or may not know in this room, there's a leadership institute here. Roger Luyanga gave money, I don't know, 15 years ago maybe, to fund the Leadership Institute. So that's one place where you can come right here at Minot State to learn about leadership skills. And that's a tool that you can take with you for your toolbox. Even though your actual career might be in cybersecurity, MIS, whatever it is, but the leadership goes with any industry. And so I just wanted to do an advertisement for that. Yeah.
Oh, great point. I'm going to move on one of the next question, if you don't mind, that I've come up with here. Could you give an example of an organization you're currently involved with that's utilizing emerging technology for productivity gains or cost savings?
So let me think. That we're involved with. Okay, so yeah. So I'm advising a company in the UK whose goal is to eliminate antibiotics in animal food, but provide some kind of solution to keep the flock or the herd healthy and keep the growth going, right? Okay, so if you're in the animal food production business, say you're in the chicken business, you want your chickens healthy and you want them to grow fast and put on a lot of weight because, I mean, that's how you make the money, right? Yeah. And yeah, and so antibiotics are a problem because people become resistant to the antibiotics when you're eating the chickens that take the antibiotics. And then if you get sick, the antibiotics don't work, right? That's a huge problem, okay? Okay, so that's the problem they're trying to solve. And so, yeah, so the technical team then went out looking for a solution to that problem. And they identified enzymes, okay? Enzymes that you can put in animal food that have the same outcome as antibiotics do. And so the technology, so they use all the technologies to do the clinical trials, the clinical studies, and then of course the scale up of the production and yeah, the whole process, huh? And then of course you got to get your information out to the producers, because there's a lot of producers out there, and get them to, to try it. Yeah. And so there you go. And then, of course, we start with the chickens, and then we move smartly to the swine, and then we move up the ladder to the beef, right? Yeah. And so, so clearly, I don't know if they're using artificial intelligence or not. I think they're using human intelligence here and a lot of trial and error. But clearly, the goal is to eliminate the antibiotics and still maintain a healthy food supply. Yep.
Awesome. Connie, you had shared with me a little story about the zoo, the local zoo. Maybe can you expand on what they're doing here, even locally, to improve animal care and reduce costs?
Yeah, so you may or may not know we're involved with the zoo here in Minot, and Clint's company, Abaxis, their primary revenue was from animal health. Even though they were in both markets, the primary was from animal health. And so at the zoo, we're involved with the hospital over there at the zoo. And a piece of equipment that they picked up last year at a conference was a piece of equipment called an imagist. And it's a little box, and the veterinarian at the zoo can make a slide. He can make a slide with urine sample, with a blood sample, with a tissue sample. He has to do a little work to make the slide, but he can make that slide, and he puts it in the little box. And within 30 seconds or something like that, artificial intelligence gives him a first-hand overview of what's on that slide. And the most important thing it does, it lets him know if he's working with a normal slide or an abnormal. Now, and that's so important because then he knows, especially if he's got an animal that he's operating on, can I stitch the patient up or do I need to do a little bit more work? The second thing is he said within 4 hours, often quicker, he actually gets a phone call from a doctor in the appropriate area to tell him more about the slide that he had, put into that machine. Now, as I just gave you 3 examples, urine, blood, or tissue. In the past, to do those tests in the hospital lab here at the Roosevelt Park Zoo, he would have had to have a urinalysis machine. He would have had to have a hematology machine for the blood work, and he would have had to have a microscope. Now he's doing 3 tests with this little one machine that he bought. One man. He's more efficient. He's faster. It saves the zoo money. And that's all happening right here in Minot with a machine that he bought that's just a little bit over a year old right now. And that's artificial intelligence.
And the animals are healthier.
And the animals are
You
healthier.
get a better outcome. Yeah, you do.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of those things are being solved by that. Well, and in a session like this, I found Dr. Hagerott's discussion really interesting and a little bit scary, right? The fact that there's so many areas that we can be compromised. And then as the day went on, I was overwhelmed with overload of information.
Right.
And, when we bring students to a session like this, the part that I'm trying to get back to, or what I would like to get to, is and so here's basically my question: what, as students or individuals working with the latest technology, need to consider as they look for ways to start a new business or develop or learn new technologies? Do you have advice on that side?
Okay, so for starting a new business, you need to identify the problem you're trying to solve. Okay, identify the problem you're trying to solve. That's the first step. And then identify the solution to solve the problem. And then do the calculation of whether it makes any economic sense to solve this problem, right? Yeah. And so at Abaxis, for instance, the problem that we were trying to solve is how do you increase the efficiency in healthcare, in the healthcare system, to reduce the cost and provide better outcomes. Okay, so it turns out that to diagnose basic serious diseases like liver disease, kidney disease, heart disease, diabetes, and those organ function problems, the process for starting out is a blood test. And to get the blood test, you had to draw the blood, send it off to a lab. A day or two later, the results come back. And then you got to go back to see the doctor again. So what are all the steps there, huh? Well, you got to go in and see the doctor, then you got to get the blood drawn, then you got to go back home again, then the doctor gets the results, and then but he hasn't seen the patient for 2 days, right? So he's kind of trying to figure out now who was this guy again now? And so what a terrible process this is, huh? And the fact is, the majority of the patients that he's dealing with are healthy, huh? So what are you paying this guy all this money, huh, to deal with a healthy patient? It makes no sense, huh? But if you could find a way of, with just say a finger stick of blood and a little device, and you could get all that liver function, kidney function, cardiac function in 12.5 minutes, huh, right on the spot, look at how much more efficient the system could be, right? Okay, because the doctor now, if you're all normal, he sends you home, huh, or send you off to a physician assistant or a nurse to deal with whatever symptoms you have, because you're not really that sick, right? But if you're really that sick, he can start working on a treatment immediately, huh, rather than waiting around, huh? And so, yeah, so that was our solution, and that was our problem we were trying to solve. And we could do all this for $50, huh? $50, less than a dinner is all it would cost. Okay, well, it turns out the reason that we did a lot more in animal health than we did in people health, even though we did a lot in people health, is the human health system is run by the government. And when it's run by the government, okay, you got all kinds of problems, huh? You got all kinds of issues because the government sets the price. The government you have to deal with the government on a lot of insurance, and it's a real challenge, right? Yeah. And so it isn't until you have a crisis, like for us, the Ebola crisis was the magic that got adoption really fast. Because if you remember Ebola, there was a physician and a nurse that caught the Ebola. They were working in Africa, and they immediately sent them back home to Emory University. And everybody thought, man, it's the end of the line for these people, huh? But what they did was they put them in isolation because nobody wanted to be anywhere near them. The lab wanted nothing to do with that Ebola blood, huh? Forget it, huh? So the strategy was keep them alive long enough so their body fought the disease. So their body fought the disease. So that means we got to watch kidney function. And if kidney function starts to go south, we need to mitigate it. Liver function, we got to watch that. We got to watch the electrolytes. You also had to watch clotting. So what Emory did was they put them in a room. They bought one of our little machines, and they checked the blood every 15 minutes, every 15 minutes. And the minute something went south, they mitigated the problem, huh? And guess what? 2 weeks later, they walked out, no problem at all. So then what happened? The CDC, because think about Ebola in Manhattan, huh? Ebola in Chicago, Ebola in Los Angeles, huh? What a disaster that would be. So the CDC then said, well, how did you guys do this, huh? And so they came up with the protocol. This is how we did it, huh? And so all of a sudden, we had orders all over the place for our machine, right? Because they needed to be prepared for a crisis like that. And then the COVID, think about the COVID, huh? People that could actually test themselves at home to determine are they infectious or not. Because if they are, they shouldn't be out socially, right? But if they're not, they can go back to work, huh? And you can do that test yourself. And so now on the animal health world, it's even more difficult for the veterinarians when you bring in your little kitty that's sick because the kitty can't talk, right? And so, and in the animal health world, it's free enterprise. It's not government. So veterinarians, for them to have a successful business, they need to be providing the top-notch service because there's a lot of competition in the veterinary world. So they're always looking for, how can I be more efficient? How can I see more patients? How can I have more quality outcomes? And so, yeah, so what we did in the early days, because any startup company is always short on cash. We needed to go where the opportunities were. So we went to the vet market first, huh? And because the veterinarians are totally consumed with how do I do it better? How do I do it more efficiently? Because if I don't, I'm not going to be able to make my payroll. And so, yeah, so that's where the momentum came. And then later on with Ebola and some of the other issues, the medical business started to grow. And believe it or not, the medical business, even though it's owned by a big vet company now, because we sold the company in 2018, the medical business is growing faster now than the veterinary business because it just took that time to make it happen. Yeah.
If I could add to it, because I think your original question was, how do you something about get started? How do you,
How do you get started?
how do you get started? So, and that's where I'm going to give, now I'm going to give an advertisement for the business school here at Minot State. And it's back to the toolkit. Because to be able to start the business, all of you are going to learn the technical skills in your chosen area. But you've heard a lot of words come out. Clint was talking about the medical market versus the veterinary market. So it's analyzing markets. How do you analyze a market? I heard Dustin actually mentioned the word ROI. What's an ROI? Return on investment. How do you determine return on investment if you're going to get into the business? Arnie mentioned a SWOT analysis. How do you do a SWOT analysis? And once you even, if you manage to actually collect the data, how do you analyze it into something meaningful with ChatGPT or whatever it was that you were talking about? So these kinds of technical business skills also go in your toolkit to supplement your technical skills that you're going to need to run your business. When you're, I say little because it's usually little when you start. And those are all, again, skills that you can get here at Minot State that might be outside your chosen area for your major that you'll need to start your business.
Great, thank you. The next point I would like to ask or touch on a little bit is probably close to home for me, in a sense that what do you do when you're not the smartest person in the room or on the stage? And I'd like your input on that, because not everyone can be the smartest person in the room. And if you get into a big enough room, there's always going to be somebody that is a bigger expert or more knowledgeable. So, my and I've been around you long enough. I know your answer here, and I'm not going to try to cut it short or get out in front of it. But obviously we all have to become experts at something in order to add value, whether that's to starting our own company or bringing people in, or like Arnie had his examples he gave and his list that he gave on creating systems. So my way was to just work harder. So, can you give some insight to the students on that?
Okay, so knowing what you don't know is critical. Huh? If you think you know it all, you're not going to be asking for the help you need. So I used to tell people that I am not the smartest guy in the room. I'm the dumbest guy in the room. Huh? So keep that in mind, huh? Because I'm going to need a lot of help, okay, to figure out this problem. Huh? And so, yeah, so the key is to get the right people in the right slot, okay, motivate them, give them incentives, and have a clear, measurable goal, and then keep track, okay, of how you're doing against that goal. And so Arnie talked about the factory and went ahead to go ahead to that factory. Okay, so we had a meltdown in our factory. And it turns out that the fellow that was running the factory, he was a PhD chemist, and he was really a good chemist, but he wasn't very good at all the other things you need to do in running a factory. So the bottom line was I had to go run the factory. And I remember I had a board meeting shortly after I took over the factory. And one of the leaders of the board, when I walked in, he said, "Oh, now we have the sales guy running the factory. What kind of an outcome are we going to have here now? Huh?" Okay, so yeah, so it turns out that I had the skills, okay, on the team, okay, but they just weren't utilized in the right fashion. Okay, so for instance, the very first day, I said, okay, guys, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have 3,000 starts, meaning we're going to have the raw materials to do 3,000 pieces. And I said, okay, well, how many do you think we're going to get that are going to pass the quality system, huh? Oh, well, we hope to have, maybe 2,000. And I said, oh man, we're going to waste a whole 1,000? Yeah, well, that's kind of the way it is today. Okay, let's start then. So away we go. And then 4:30